Welcome to the Midweek Mailbag. Yes, we are still calling it the Midweek Mailbag, your Detroit Lions midweek podcast where we answer all of your Detroit Lions questions sent to us either through our Pride of Detroit Direct email, through Twitter, through wherever you want to try to get. Slide into my DMs. Sometimes I'll do that. Sometimes I'm like, hey, those are my DMs. They're precious. My name, by the way, is Jeremy Reisman. I don't care what you call me. You can find me at Detroit Online on socials. I don't know what my title is anymore. Who cares? With
Producer.
me, eager to get on the mic there, is during the off season, we're calling him the general manager of Pride of Detroit. You can find him at Erik Schlitt on Twitter. Erik Schlitt is here. Erik, how's it going?
Hey, buddy. My DMs are open as well, but they are full of spam. Thanks,
Yeah.
Elon. My goodness. Oh, it's terrible. It is terrible. I always enjoy the dialogue that comes from some direct messages, but my goodness, the last couple of months have been awful, just awful, because of the spam. The spam has just been terrible. But I enjoy the Lions fans, that's for sure. Those guys always bring they always bring the heat.
So what you're saying is flood Eric's DM so that he doesn't have to see all the porn bots.
No, I report them because I'm stupid, and I'm like report because I think
You're
does
making
something.
a difference.
No, yeah, right. I'm fooling myself into thinking that it's actually doing anything.
All right. Well, let's get on to some Lions talk. On today's show, we're going to move a little bit away from free agency as kind of the pages being flipped there. The Lions don't have many more moves to come, if any. We'll talk about some decisions that are coming down the pike. But I want to start, and we're kind of going to go off the board a little bit here because today was, I thought, maybe one of my favorite off-season days ever, Erik, because the Lions, as they have become wont to do recently, are getting active in trying to put their mark on the rule book here.
Sure.
Another 3 proposals this year, which I feel like for the past 3 or 4 years, they've had at least multiple proposals, which is not common for any team, really. You know,
Even more uncommon, they're getting passed.
Yeah, you're right.
Right? They are, which is shocking. Like
Yes.
at a crazy level, what they're suggesting has been passed almost unanimous. Like almost everyone that they proposed, not everyone, but almost.
Right.
It's a very high rate for sure.
Well, don't get me too excited because as many listeners know, one of their proposals this year is something I have been pleading for years. And don't let Warden Sharp fool you. This isn't a Lions are a big committer of this penalty and therefore I want it passed. The Lions are trying to get rid of automatic first downs on defensive illegal contacts and defensive holding. Everyone knows my opinion on this, so I'm curious. Are you trumpeting the proposal as much as I am, or are you a little bit more not in favor?
No, yeah, I would like that. I don't think that one's going to get passed, unfortunately.
I don't
yeah,
either.
just because I think it's too big of a change. Like a lot of what the Lions have passed have been, or suggested in the past, have been very logical things that make sense for the betterment of players. And while this one may be logical,
Thank you.
it doesn't necessarily. It's not as easily passable because it's a deviation from what a rule has been for a long time, right?
Sure.
Like it's
They changed the kickoff though. They're getting more and more open to making bigger changes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Maybe I didn't look at all of them. I just looked at the Lions ones. But did they tweak that one as well? Did they ask
Not that
for
I've seen, no.
Shoot, I was hoping they
I
would
could be
make
wrong,
it.
but I didn't see it.
We had talked about it being more punishable, right?
If I'm not
like
mistaken, right, yeah, make the push the kickoffs back, or or make the touchback further up. If I could be mistaken here, so forgive me if I'm talking out of turn here, but I think these were the team submitted ones. That could be a competition committee submitted one. The owners' meetings are 2 weeks away here, so that's when they'll get voted on and passed or not passed or tabled until later in the year. But our first question here comes from David Mara surrounding the automatic first down rule change. It says, if automatic first for defensive holding isn't a thing, won't defenders just intentionally hold on 3rd and long if they're about to get beat? Worth it to get a second crack at a stop if it's 3rd and 15 and you're a cornerback getting beat downfield? My response is, yeah, probably. And I don't care because you know what else happens? When an offensive tackle gets beat, he holds his guy to avoid a sack. That penalties exist because penalties happen, I should say, because there is the split seconds decision made by players that say, I better break this rule or something even worse is going to happen. And that's okay. Like, a sack is much worse than a 10-yard penalty for an offensive player, so they do that. What I'm saying is basically players make these kind of, cost benefit analysis all the time. And for some reason, we're taking away that ability to happen on defense. A holding penalty on offense doesn't come with a loss of down. That's like, if that was the case, there wouldn't be any holding on the offensive line ever, because a sack might be better than that.
There wouldn't be any holdings called. Is probably what would happen.
Probably true.
Right? Because I think at the core of this, and the reason it will probably be shot down, is because the competition committee, the owners, don't want more flags, and that's what this could lead to. So I think the way to offset that is, instead of holding being a 5-yard penalty, it's now a 10-yard penalty. Sure. And now you're not holding 3 times on 3rd and 15. You're only holding once, right? Because that's all. And now you're in 3rd and manageable. So if you want this to pass, you have to make a couple of adjustments. It's not just a simple takeaway. I think they would need to increase the damage of the penalty itself. And so there's ways around it. I don't think will pass in this exact manner, though.
Right. I mean, and the reason why I'm so actively against it is just I am so sick of 3rd and 15s, 3rd and 20s being converted by a very ticky-tacky called illegal contact. And I think we all agree that illegal contact, defensive holding, those tend to be overcalled and extremely inconsistent from staff to staff, right? From officiating staff to officiating staff. And if it's that inconsistent, if it's that hard to predict, if that's hard to call, because those kind of calls, I know Mike Pereira once said that pass interference is one of the most difficult calls to make live as an official. I would say that probably extends to illegal contact and defensive holding, since a lot of it is kind of the same thing. Making that infraction be so detrimental to a team when it's so subjective like that is making the game worse. I mean, you want to talk about the Chiefs and their playoff run this year, and everyone talking about how officials are ruining the game. Everything's rigged. Well, if you give officials a weapon like this, not saying that they're using it for nefarious purposes, but when you give them a weapon like this, that's how they can actually impact games. And I don't think they're doing it intentionally. I just think it's a hard thing to call, and to give an official that much power is making the game worse.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think there's some finessing that needs to be done, and the owners themselves won't just pass it. I think it's a competition committee with addendums and conversation before anything along those lines gets passed. But it's a good first step to at least bring it up and put that in people's minds.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when you have to do tinkering like that, it usually results in a multi-year process, not something that can be adopted this year. But maybe the league will pleasantly surprise me. Not banking on it.
Yeah. There's other, I mean, the other ones were interesting. The other Lions proposals.
Yeah, let's talk about the playoff one, because I think that one has gotten the most attention nationally. Basically saying that, hey, the 7 teams that make the playoffs, that's not going to change. It'll be the same 7. But when it comes to seeding, we're going to go best record or worst record. It doesn't matter if you won your division. That does not get you an automatic home game. That does not make you a top 4 seed automatically. And clearly this was influenced by what the Lions went through last year. Both the Lions and the Vikings entering week 18, 14-2. Winner of that game got the 1 seed. Loser of that game got the 5 seed, despite the fact that those were record-wise, the two best teams in the league at the time, or in the NFC at the time.
Yep.
I'm a little bit more wishy-washy on this one. I could go either way. I'm curious how you feel.
Yeah, I could go either way too, because I do think there's merit in having divisions because it makes those games more meaningful. You have 6 a year, and you really have to double down and keep your focus. They're harder because you know your opponent, and so there's more value in those. I would say. At the same time, it is very hard to justify a team with a losing record, as we've seen in the past,
Yep.
hosting a playoff game, especially when a team that is 2, 3, 4, even 5 wins better,
Yeah.
having to travel on the road. And so, yeah, it's hard for this one. I completely understand it. At the same time, I think the league loves the fact that last game of the year had so much value on it. It drew so much attention. There was so much. They were calling it their best regular season game ever, right? Like you can't do that if this rule passes. And so I think the league likes the drama. And so again, this is one probably won't be passed.
Yeah, I would say the only thing that people aren't talking about enough in the positive is that I feel like this would make teams play a little bit more, like teams that make the playoffs. There would more likely be stakes in week 18 for teams that have already clinched, right? A lot of times we see teams that are clinched and like, well, I clinched, but there's no way I'm going to win the division, so that means I'm stuck with a 5 seed. That means I'm stuck with a 6 seed. It means I'm stuck with a 7 seed. If you place it like this, I would say there's probably a better chance of stakes being there for almost every playoff team. It's certainly not going to be every playoff team every year, but I think it would add some stakes to week 18. But then again, it might also take stakes away from teams that, they know they won their division. They know they're going to be the 7 seed because they're the 7-8-1 Carolina Panthers in 2014, right? They know they're not going to climb up to 6 or 5. But then again, if you're 7-8-1, maybe you're still fighting for the division. I don't know. Either way, I'm with you. It's just divisions still matter on some level, right? Because that's your auto bid. You still get an auto bid to the playoffs if you win the division. It's just once you win that, suddenly the rest of the division games mean less. And I don't know how you fix that. I could go either way on this one, but like you, I'm pretty certain it's not going to pass. So I'm not that concerned. I'm not going to get emotionally tied to this one. I'm just be like, And then the last one was one in which we didn't quite understand when it first dropped. And we learned something new about the league, which we always seem to do around this time of year because the league's infinite rules, you're always just kind of unearthing a new one. But basically what the rule proposal here is it comes from what we all remember of the Lions 2024. Maybe the most defining thing about the 2024 season, which was the crazy amount of injuries. The Lions are proposing that players placed on injured reserve prior to cutdown date do not count against the 90-man roster. Now, originally, we all thought that meant 90-man roster in the offseason because that, to us, was the only 90-man roster that exists. But thanks to our friend Nolan Bianchi over the Detroit News, the 90-man roster actually exists year-round. But during the regular season, that is the 53-man roster, the 16-man practice squad, and then everyone on IR, whether they were put on IR preseason or during the season. That cannot exceed 90. Normally, that's not an issue, right? Because you have 69 players between the 53-man roster and the practice squad. That would mean you need 21 guys on injured reserve to go past that. I did a little math, Eric. And do you want to guess how close the Lions got last year to 90-man?
They were at 87 or 89. They were real close.
Yeah, I haven't looked at ever, like I was going at the Wayback Machine on the internet and just like looking at the Lions roster, and I had them at 87 at one point.
Yeah,
18 guys on injured reserve. I think at one point they had 19 guys on injured reserve, but they had one fewer guy on the 53. So they got surprisingly close to that last year. And I think this rule essentially doesn't matter. I don't know if the Lions are ever going to have as bad of luck as they did last year, but
I
It's an
think it
interesting
does.
proposal.
I think it does matter, and I'm going to tell you why. Um, what often goes under the radar is when the Lions make injury settlements,
Yeah.
and those injury settlements were happening during the season this year. They don't often happen during the season, and I think the reason they were happening during the season is because the Lions were starting to come up against that
Yeah.
that cap number. It puts the team in a bit of a bind when you place a player on IR before cutdowns because it ends their season. And for the player, it's there's a lot of incentive for them to stay on IR because they get a paycheck. There's a lot of incentive for the team to not to get them off of IR and basically like pay them off to go away and give them more room and maybe pay them at a lesser cost. There are situations like last year, like and again, I'm going to speculate here, but Connor Galvin was hurt in the preseason and he stayed on the roster the entire year. And then when he could have given him an ERFA contract, they still elected not to. So in my mind, that says to me, he probably stayed on the roster because he wanted to stay on the roster to get better and get the paycheck, and not necessarily because the Lions did. So the Lions were kind of stuck with him. If he doesn't want to get an injury settlement, then he doesn't have to. And then he's stuck. The Lions can't do anything with him because he's now counting towards their 90 man. And so again, I'm speculating because of how the circumstances played out. I don't know if that was the case, but I can envision a case where a player could basically kind of hold the team hostage for taking up a roster spot. And if that is the case, now under this new rule, that player wouldn't count. Therefore, that player wouldn't be able to hold the team hostage with a roster spot. And so it's more likely you can reach an injury settlement. Most of the time when injury settlements happen, it's because a player wants to be free of IR to try and find another job with another team. If you have an injury that's significant enough that you're going to miss the season, like Connor did, maybe he needed to be on IR, or maybe he was just didn't reach an injury settlement that he was satisfied, or maybe it's nothing that I've talked about. It's something completely different. That's why I'm speculating. But there is a scenario in which teams could kind of be held over the barrel,
Handcuffed a little bit. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. But
I mean, we are in the weeds on this thing right here.
Right. Which I think means it's time to pull ourselves out of the weeds and move on from rule proposals. Let's get to one topic that I'm sure most people have a strong opinion on. David P. asks, walk me through why you should and shouldn't extend Jameson Williams. I feel like at times last year, JMO was the third most valuable skill player on the team, only behind Gibbs and St. Brown. He has speed that is essentially irreplaceable and has such great blocking for a player of his skill set. I think the suspension in prior history, you would honestly lock him up now at a discount compared to what he'll get in the future. I get receiver as a position that's easily replaceable through the draft, but I will be heartbroken if JMO isn't a Lion in the future. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he hits it at the nail on the head at the end there. Is wide receiver is the most easily replaceable position on any NFL roster right now because of the way that the population of wide receivers that are coming up from the college level. And yes, it's tough to teach speed. And yes, it's tough to teach players that are elite skill players to block and have that desire to block and be effective at it. But if you're looking in the pecking order of targets, I don't know if he's third. He might be fourth behind Laporta, right? And so you might have Gibbs, St. Brown, and then Laporta. And if you're looking at what's more easily replaceable from a team perspective, finding a complete tight end versus finding a blocking wide receiver who also has elite speed, I think you're going to find that receiver a little bit more easy, or a little easier, I should say, than the complete tight end. So in Detroit's mind, he is going to be a little bit further down the re-sign pecking order, I think, because of the position he plays and the tough to find guys that are ahead of him at the skill player positions.
Right. I mean, the crude comparison here is Tyreek Hill with the Chiefs, right? They realized we have a lot of guys that we need to re-sign. We have a lot of players that we want to be part of this long term. Tyreek Hill is an undeniable talent, arguably a top 3 wide receiver in this league, but we got to get rid of him because we can't pay everybody. And we think we can replace wide receivers. Now, to be clear, they haven't done a very good job of it since, right?
Sure.
That is both an example of why you should do it and why you shouldn't do it, because they've won Super Bowls without him because they're an extremely talented team with an extremely talented quarterback, but the offense has undeniably gotten worse without Tyreek Hill. And so I think that's a perfect example to show the benefits and the drawbacks of making a move like that. But the Lions are in a tough situation now where they're going to have to make tough decisions like this. They're already having to make tough decisions in free agency, and we're seeing some blowback from that. It's going to get a lot more interesting when they have to start cutting players, when they have to start restructuring contract, when they might have to trade away a player or two that is beloved on this team, and it's going to make people scratch their heads a lot, just like it did when Tyreek Hill was traded. But JMO to me is one of those guys that's in that category for all the reasons Erik just said in terms of the replacement, for some of the off-field stuff, right? Like the Lions have to cover their butt there. Like that's why I don't think they're going to extend him now. They have the option of the 5th-year option, and I think it's probably worth exercising, although that's tough too because wide receivers get paid a lot of money, and that drives the 5th-year option price up. I know the 5th-year option price has already been set for him, so like, you know, all the Bengals receivers getting paid doesn't impact that. But it's a tough situation, and it could go either direction. But if the Lions have to make a decision, I think Erik hit it on the head. That is just, there isn't a lot of people that can replace his specific skill, but you can still get receivers with other skill sets that can be just as valuable to your football team.
I think the only way they do get it done is if, like David suggested, there's some sort of discount because of what he's done. And, you know, because of the suspension, because of the injury, if there was a discount, but it seems really challenging to try and get a discount on a player who's, you know, staring at a 5th-year option and a potential payday if he were to hit free agency.
Right. I am going to jump to another question, and I can't seem to find it right now, but someone asked, I'm sorry for not getting the name. I can't seem to find it. The Lions obviously have a decision coming up on 2 other people with an extension coming up. One being Kirby Joseph potentially as early as this offseason. The other one being Brian Branch in a couple of years. Which one do you think holds a higher priority? Do you think the Lions can get both of those done? And if not, who is the guy that they pick to extend amongst their safeties?
You said Kirby and Brian
Branch. Yep.
I personally think Kirby is, while he's the more pressing need, I would extend Branch, because a lot of why Kirby was valuable in recent years is because he has a really good nose for the football. And the turnovers this year really vaulted him up to a new level, earned him an extra pay. His pay went up quite a bit substantially this year. And excuse me. And I think he's in a spot right now where he's at his peak. He could decline, just like we've talked about with turnovers in the past. Turnovers are a stat that can easily decline. And so Kirby, I think, in order to peak his value, needs those turnovers to be a consistent part of his game. Whereas Branch, so they have. Sophomore year was not as high, right? But
I think it was 4 interceptions, 9 interceptions, right?
It feels like I thought he had more as a rookie, but okay.
Nope,
I'm with you.
4.9. He did have 2 forced fumbles rookie year.
But Branch is so eclectic and so impactful, and he has so much more range and so much more upside, and he's still not even at his ceiling, in my opinion. I think that is something that you can rely on more consistently. That's something you can project out, saying he's going to be at this level for X number of years. And so his re-signing is it's less risky. I would say.
Yeah.
And so I would lean towards Branch. I think the Lions would lean towards Branch. It'd be nice to be able to get them both done. But if you're asking me to pick, I'm sticking with Branch.
If it was up to me, I think I would let Kirby play out this year, see where he's at, and then maybe either extend him or don't. And then I'm with you. Branch to me is a lock. He's someone that you need to have extended. But if I were to guess what's going to happen, I think they're going to get both done. I really do. And maybe it'd be different if the order was different. If Branch was up before Kirby, maybe they'd see like the financial situation they were in and be tricky. But fact of the matter is Kirby, a decision on Kirby is going to have to be made first. And I was kind of 50-50 on whether they would do it until Brad Holmes talked at the end of the season. And Brad Holmes did not really mince words about what they think of Kirby Joseph. Let me quote. He's an all-pro player, and he's another one that's gotten better and better, so he has proven that he's a Detroit Lion. He fits our culture. It's hard to find a ball hawk guys that will tackle like how he does, and I think that's what makes him unique. So again, we haven't had any intense dialogue about that yet, but obviously we want to keep the good players here. That seems pretty definitive to me, that they want to get a deal done. Now, that doesn't mean a deal will get done. Kirby's going to be asking for a lot of money. He's going to be asking for a record-setting amount of money, more than Antoine Winfield's $20 million per year deal. So it's going to cost the Lions north of that if they want to keep him. But Brad Holmes has made it pretty darn clear that he thinks Kirby is talented, a culture fit, unique, and valuable. And that's enough to make me think they're going to get a deal done with him, and Brian Branch is all of those things as well. And so I do think they're going to find a way to get both those guys done, which again probably brings the probability of a guy like J-Mo getting an extension a little bit further down, right?
Yes.
It's just a matter of you have to pick and choose, and I know spending $20+ million at the same position twice looks weird. People are hammering the Bengals right now for doing it for wide receivers. But these are two core players to what they do. They need investments on the defensive side of the football. And hell, DJ Reed even said part of the reason he wanted to come to Detroit was to play with a couple of all-pro safeties.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It was that's should tell you what you need to know right there.
Right. All right, let's fit one more in before we take our first break here. Alex T. From Pride of Detroit Direct asks, we have yet to see Brad trade any of the players he's drafted. Do you think that strategy changes knowing extensions are due? Aside from J-Mo, what trade candidates would be on the table, and what would the estimated trade value be?
Well, I think J-Mo's the easy one, right? Let's see. I don't know if there's anybody that sticks out. Like I would have said James Houston if he was still here, right? Because that upside was there,
sure,
right? Like people looked at him and said, "Hey, baby, he's still got it."
Yeah.
I'm of the mindset that quad group that they have coming up is they can get it done because of the TV money that I believe is coming down the road. And so I do think the Gibbs, Campbell, Laporta, Branch, I think you can get it done if you're creative. So
can I throw one out there? And
please let me look over the roster a little bit.
It's not this year. So I already seen some people propose it for this year. Next year, Taylor Decker becomes tradable.
But that's didn't they say draft pick? Didn't he say draft pick?
Oh, I guess this one. He's yet to change any of the players. That's true. He did say draft picks.
Sorry, that's where my focus was.
You're right. I'm cheating a little bit. You cheated last week. I'm cheating a little bit here. Decker becomes a little bit tradable next year. He was technically drafted by the team. counts. But like, I mean, you saw again, like bring the Chiefs as an example. They traded away a key tackle this year. Tackles get a lot on the market now. You know, a team trading for Taylor Decker isn't getting Taylor Decker in his prime and getting him when he's, I don't know, what, 32, 33. So, you know, the value there is probably like a mid-round pick, third, fourth, maybe fifth. But it's a way of clearing out money at that point. You save $11 million, almost $12 million by moving on from Decker next year. Not advocating for that, but it becomes part of the conversation, I would say, next year. You know, you could even potentially throw Graham into that conversation, although I don't know how much you're going to get for Graham at this point in his career. Other than that, like, yeah, if you're talking draft picks, I don't know, man. I mean,
I don't think they would trade Hendon Hooker, but like a quarterback is always tradable.
Sure.
The hard part with the draft picks is what's the value to the other team? Is a guy like Malcolm Rodriguez tradable? Yeah. Like is there like I think
though he'd have to do it now, right?
Well, I think the value is there with Malcolm. I think somebody can look at him and say, "Man, I like the upside of him. He could be my linebacker 3, where in Detroit he's linebacker 4." And so,
yeah.
But you'd have to have a team that's like, I need a linebacker, and I'm willing to give up draft capital. And what would that the capital is going to be lower than his draft pick, and he was picked what, 5th round, so it's going to be like, or was he 6th? He's going to, you know, you're talking about 6th or 7th round picks coming back in return, right? So, yeah, the value is going to be low, because if you look at like your day 2 picks, day 3 picks are going to be hard to justify. Like nobody's really jumping over to pay, you know, for them. But day 2 picks, is anyone going to pay for Broderick Martin? No. If you're keeping those other 4, then Hendon's really the last guy there. And again, I don't think they're going to trade Hendon, but he plays quarterback, and that's a tradable commodity if they decided to go that route. So, yeah, if you're talking draft picks, I don't really think they have one. Malcolm might be the best piece they have.
And they'd have to again, do it I don't, now or at the
well, in
deadline,
camp,
right?
maybe, yeah. Or maybe maybe in camp somebody gets hurt on the Jets.
Right.
And Glenn's like, hey, I'd love if you can send me Malcolm, and you know, you make it work like that or something, right?
That Detroit to Jets pipeline really didn't come to fruition this offseason. I think a lot of people predicted a lot of Lions free agents to go that way or to Chicago, and almost none of them did. And I think that's just because the Lions retained almost everybody. There's every day it's just like, oh, they re-signed that guy. Oh, they re-signed that guy. Which I know is not a sexy offseason, but considering how good of a team they were last year, probably not a terrible strategy if you can make it work. But let's take our first break here. When we come back, we're going to dive a little bit into the NFL draft. We're going to talk more about offseason personnel decisions ahead in this year and beyond when we come back here on the Midweek Mailbag. We'll be right back. All right.
Someone said to me on Twitter today, "Oh, they're just bringing everyone back. I guess they're not going to improve." And I'm like, "Well, I'll take 15 wins again. That's fine. I'll accept it."
Yeah, I don't know. We've just become so used to winning, you know, increasing by at least 3 wins every year. Like, you're telling me this team can't go 18 and -1 next year? If they have traded for Myles Garrett, they could have.
You're right. You're
right. I get like part of that, right? Was it?
No, I know.
2014 to 2015, or like they had one really, really good season. They didn't do much in the next offseason, and then they kind of stunk the next season. And I feel like that's in the back of people's heads.
I'm just venting because I'm sick of all of every tweet that I have. Just at least one response is something absurd.
Just say you're sick of the offseason, man. Just say it.
No, but I'm starting, look, people are wearing me down, that's for sure. But no, but no, everything's great.
Everything's
Twitter's the
fantastic.
best. Twitter's awesome. I only look at my DMs now.
It was broken for like half the day today too.
Oh yeah, it was nice. I got a lot of reading done. I've been doing some work on the grid index.
I went over to Blue Sky and tweeted, or whatever they call it over there.
Sure.
And then
skied it up.
And then people shamed me for not being there more. So I'm like, oh, this is fun. Sure, go enable that Nazi over there on Twitter. Why don't you, Jeremy? I'm like, Jesus, I thought this was a nice place.
Whenever I tweet over there, for every comment I get on Twitter about like how terrible the Lions are, I get a positive reaction from them. And the interaction is, hey, thanks for posting here. It's always like, hey, oh, thanks, man.
I get a little bit of that, but then it's a lot of like, why aren't you staying here? You should stay here. Hi, Ryan. I'm gonna have Nightbot get over there. You're spamming the chat. I don't appreciate it. All right, let me get to some alerts because I know people love it when we start veering at least somewhat close to politics. They love that, so I'm gonna move away. Veer course. Not that obvious. 19 months subscribed to the channel says the Chiefs let Tyreek Hill go and they won a Super Bowl. How is that that pick? Oh, that was 3 days ago. I'm not sure why I'm reading that, but you know what? You get it anyways, and it's topical because we were just talking about that. Q note. Thank you for the 4 months. Says the main show LFG. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's this show.
No, I don't think that's true.
Yeah, with the main.
I don't have one. Well,
that's your fault. You do in November.
I do. No, you don't call this a main. That's not what that is.
Sure you do. It qualifies.
Justin Heck, 17 months subscribed to the channel. Thank you, buddy. J-Man Jr., 45 months subscribed to the channel. Yukon Lions fan, 10 months using that Twitch Prime. Sundog, 27 months, says lengthy pornbot intro banter is what I stick around for. Long live the main show. He spelled it M-A-I-N, which...
Well, I can't help that.
That's
fine.
That's offensive to Ryan, I would say.
Well, Ryan's in here spamming stuff too, so, that's fine. That's just, throwing stuff right back at him.
Right.
If he didn't do that, I probably wouldn't be so offended.
Kula, thank you for the 28 months, says you need to clip 225 on last week's midweek mailbag when Erik went off about Aaron Rodgers.
My favorite topic.
I'm just gonna say
Yeah.
Agent Smith, 22 months, says thanks for bringing us the midweek mailbag, guys. Love you both. Spelled MID space WEAK space MALE space.
Yeah.
Bad guys.
Yeah. The mailbag.
So now we're the ones that are mid and weak.
And mail.
No. Well, yes, and male. Thano, thank you for the 30 months, says 30. McVeigh Rob, 27 months, says thank you for making the offseason bearable. Is it bearable? Who makes the offseason bearable to us? Like, who watches The Watchmen? Who makes, if we're making the offseason bearable, who is making it bearable to us?
I don't know, man. I'm just doing a lot of studying right now. That's what I'm doing. I'm spending less time getting yelled at, more time reading about these prospects.
Us? Chat? The ones that are calling us mid and weak? You guys are the ones that are supposed to be making me feel better?
That's just affectionate.
Stop.
That's just nice.
Stop siding with them all the time, you people pleaser.
Well, they're good people.
You're the worst. Tell them how you actually feel, Erik.
No, they're great. It's better than being on social media right now. I'll tell you that.
Captain James Kirk 10-bit says midweek. I can tell you how he spelled it. Sammy Boys 26 months says excited about excited about a possible all defensive draft.
And it's not going to happen, but
I was going to say, I don't think that's going to happen either. Listen,
they certainly need, I could see them going defensive, like heavy early, but yeah, they want an X of the future. They want a blocking tight end. They want an interior guard. Like, those are things that they need. They need edge. They need like depth in a lot of spots at linebacker, or linebacker and defensive tackle. But you could pass on those. But you definitely need to address some secondary stuff, like bigger needs, more obvious needs on defense.
I mean,
offense.
We essentially traded or got rid of Jameson Williams in the first segment, so now they need a Jameson Williams replacement. Kidding.
I mean,
kidding.
If you're gonna do that, it's really interesting because, like, if they are looking to move on from JMO, or if they are looking to trade Taylor Decker, as you blasphemously suggested,
next year is when you have that conversation. I'm not saying do it.
Well, but you're either banking on Manu being ready, or you're drafting his replacement now.
Of course, that has a huge bearing on whether you make that decision or not.
But that's what I'm saying, is that if you're not counting Manu in the conversation because you don't know where he's at, and you're like, I'm going to have to trade Decker, you're drafting a tackle this year.
Yeah, sure.
And it's a very interesting roster when you look at it next year, because, like, I should screenshot it for you so we can show the people. It's kind of a little scary, but very offense heavy. Like, they have starters across the board. Defense, It's like, it looks just like a disaster. They have like half the starting defense is under contract, but like almost all of the starting offense is under contract in 2026. And so I get they're going to need to add defensive players, but
long-term needs beyond 2026.
Yeah.
By the way, Frank, I assure you, I don't even pretend to think I know more than Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell on anything.
Did someone say that?
Yes.
that we think we know more, or just you specifically?
Just me. I don't know what I said to suggest that, but I can assure you that I don't, and don't pretend to. Doesn't mean you can't criticize a move here and there, but I would say that's why actually I kind of take the opposite approach of the draft of a lot of people, which is like, I'm going to scout 800 players, and if they don't draft the guy that I don't want, they're dumb, not me. Like, I'm just like, I'm going to enjoy the draft for the ride, and then once they draft someone, I'm just like, cool, let's figure out why they did that. Because, I mean, I don't think there's an easier way to humble yourself as a talent evaluator than to try to take stabs at the draft, because you are going to get a lot wrong every year, especially if you're just armchair doing it like we all are, right? Looking at YouTube highlights and
slow down.
Yeah, you've never missed.
No, I'm not claiming that. I was claiming.
I'm not saying you don't put in some work. I'm saying that the amount of knowledge available to the public is dwarfed by the amount of knowledge by the people making the decisions.
Sure.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Try to leave the name calling out of it then next
Whatever,
time.
armchair GM.
Exactly.
Batman the Hulk, great name. 52 months subscribed to the channel, says, can we just get the season underway? I'm bored. No. RGA 28 months subscribed to the channel. Add Jerome 5 months subscribed to the channel. Captain James Kirk 1 bit, not gonna read it because it was only 1 bit and it's rude. Damian Smith 5 pounds says, the same people many were calling practice squad players at the end of last season are being re-signed. Does this signal anything?
Well,
that people shouldn't have been calling them practice squad players, probably.
No, but like, I mean, I get it. But when you look at where they rank on the depth chart, you're talking about like third string guys.
It's true.
You
I
know,
mean,
for a lot of them.
yeah,
Like Muhammad. Muhammad is going to was he played a pretty significant role down the stretch, started a couple of games, but when you have a healthy roster, he's probably a third string guy, which is probably practice squad, which is
right.
like I
True.
get that. What it means is you're adding depth. The idea there's a lot of people, and I'm not saying that this question answer I missed it. Was it David that
Damian
said
Smith.
Damien? I'm not saying Damien saying this, but this 90-man roster is not all going to be starters. Like they're not even going to be all guys that are in the too deep. Like you're going to have guys that you're signing just because they are going to be veterans that you keep on the roster. They're going to be the Tom Kennedys of the world who hold value behind the scenes, who can spot start for you. And those are the players that are going to help you when you have massive attrition, which inevitably teams have attrition, whether it's massive or not. Like, but if you start losing guys, like you want to have the best of those players
Sure.
available to you on your roster. And so you need to sign guys that the plan is I'm going to sign them and they're going to be, they might just be on the practice squad.
Right.
That might be the full intention of why you're signing them, but you're doing it to get them in the building, to get them under contract, to get them in your system so that when attrition comes, you have options.
Yeah.
Like,
and I would imagine if you were to look at like the 90-man squad in 2021 or 2022 and compare it to now, back then it was just like UDFAs, rookies, guys that have never played it down in their life. Now those spots are being filled with guys like Pat O'Connor and who's the guy they signed today? Drawing a blank.
Muhammad.
Yeah. You know, guys that have been in the system, guys that have proven if they're elevated from the practice squad, they can go out there and do something. Now you can only carry a certain amount of veterans on your practice squad anyways, but I'd like to think they are deeper than they've ever been before, on top of also having the most top end talent that they've ever had.
And we've talked about this before in the past as well. It's cheaper and easier to retain a customer or a worker than it is to go get a new one. So by adding players that already know the system, you are skipping months of acclimation that are going to happen with a lot of these other guys. And so you're going to be going into camp ready to go from jump. And the rookies are going to be in a spot where they're going to be swimming. Like it's going to be a hard road for the rookies, but that's okay. That's what championship caliber teams do. They force the hand and make everybody get better. RGA, we do have 70 players, 7 draft picks, which leaves 13 that they might end up 13 spots available. Right now, those all may be undrafted guys. The lowest number this regime has ever brought in from undrafted is 12. So
it would make sense for it to shrink over time too, but at the same time, I'm kind of expecting free agency to be more or less done at this point.
Yeah, the only guy I'm thinking about is
Khalil.
Yeah, Dorsey. Yeah. But again, with the injury, that could be a guy that you add later down the road, and you don't have to force the hand now. With the guys that are free agents, Awashika, you might want to bring in because you're a little light on the interior. But if they decide that they want to,
it's kind of like Muti is taking that spot, even though he was on the team last year. You know.
Well, they need at least 3 interior players in order to cycle 3.
Right.
3 lines. Right. In order to cycle 3 for training camp practices.
Yeah.
And so are you going to take the same approach you did at center last year and just bring in like 4 or 5 UDFA guards and just let them battle it out and see who shows up? That's how they ended up with Kingsley last year. Like they brought 3 guys in, let them battle it out. Kingsley came out on top, and then he's the guy. Maybe Kingsley's taking steps forward, and they think he's ready to get a shot in the two deep. We'll have to figure out where he's at because we haven't seen him since last September. So
Right. Sundog, I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not because of what we talked about last podcast. I'm gonna guess from the all caps you're being sarcastic. Captain James Kirk with the 10 bit says PODD was outstanding this week. Those who aren't subscribing are missing out. Thanks for the salary cap insight, Jeremy. Appreciate that, Captain James Kirk. And I know you were joking with the 1-bit thing. I wasn't taking that personally, so you didn't have to butter my bread, so to speak. Don't give me that face. By the way,
that's stuff my grandmother used to say, man.
You brought my bread.
We're talking about
all right,
aging.
Mr. Golly, relax.
My daughter told me today that I was not trendy. She looked at me and went, I said something like,
not trending?
Not trendy.
Trendy.
You're not trendy. You're not trendy, Dad.
I got an alert from Tom Pellister, and I'm like, what? I had to double. So the Texans and Danielle Hunter have agreed on a 1-year, $35.6 million contract extension that makes him the NFL's second highest paid defensive player. I was just like, I don't think I've ever seen that kind of deal for a defensive player. A 1-year, $35.6 million extension. But it makes sense. But that puts him $0.1 million ahead of Max Crosby, I think, right? He was at $35.5 million a year. It's cheating when you only do it for 1 year. Dirty Gert, thank you for the 8 months. Thanks for making off-season not suck as bad. Go Loins. Again, I'm glad. I'm happy to be making the off-season better for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But it still kind of sucks for me.
You know what you do?
What's that?
You read mock drafts from Brett Whitefield. That'll help you.
Look at you being a people pleaser again. You see Brett's name in the chat. And you're like, oh, let me butter his bread. I'm just gonna say that all the time now.
I hope so.
Just like I'm gonna say devour feculence all the time. All right, we're through alerts. Kevin James Kirk with another 1-bit says insert fry meme. Take my money. Appreciate it. So that means since we're through through alerts, we can answer some of your guys' questions. Hold on. What's up, Goof? Thank you for the 34 months. Says, oh, you thought you were through alert. Okay. Appreciate you, Goof. Dan, is Dan here? Dan Bask? Because he had a question about salary cap stuff that I didn't want to do on the show because both of us can get a little too deep, and I'm not sure how well it
Sorry about that
travels
earlier.
through the air. Anyways, but he had a question about dead money and when it hits the cap, and I'm happy to talk about that, but I'd rather do it on break than during the podcast.
Mm-hmm. What was the question?
He was confused, I think, as to when a contract voids, you cut a person, when do all the prorations hit, which is typically the year it voids or the year you get cut. But that's it's the one benefit of a June 1st cut is that one of those prorations stays.
Yeah, it really depends on the time of the year that you decide to cut the player. Because, if it's post-June, some of it can kick, some of it won't. But yes, it's like anything in the NFL. Time of the year holds a big impact on the rules that apply.
True. Right. Kind of like how when you cut a player, they might have to hit waivers, they might not have to hit waivers, depends when. Brett, they always, for whatever reason, Lions contracts, I swear, come out late last
Dude, it's
than everybody's.
we're talking a week and a half now.
It was like that with someone last year too. It happens every year where I'm checking every single day for like 2 weeks. And it also like the contract is filed, right? He's under contract. It's somewhere.
I mean, they've held the presser and announced it.
Yes.
So it has to be like they wouldn't do that
signed,
if it was
it's
in limbo.
delivered. It's out there. It's just, I assume most of these guys are getting them from agents and the lines here, they're telling them, hey, don't put them out there or whatever. Like they're just, I don't have a good answer for you, Brett, unfortunately. But the DJ Reed numbers are still not out there for whatever reason, and it's frustrating because I would very much like to compare them to Carlton Davis's overall contract and write a whole post about it and all that sort of stuff. And just for my own personal curiosity, I'd like to know, and for the million of people asking how much cap space do the Lions have left, that would be a humongous part of the puzzle for us to give you an accurate answer, but it's not out there. Neither is a bunch of other contracts. Tim Patrick's contract isn't out there yet, and that was one that was labeled up to $4 million, so I imagine it's not going to be $4 million. The quarterback, Allen, that one's not out there yet, Kyle Allen.
It's league minimum, I can tell you that already.
It probably is, but I'd like to see that for sure. What other ones aren't out there? There's a few more that aren't out there that I want to see.
Yeah. There's DJ Reed, Kyle Allen, Tim Patrick, Kenny, your boy, Dan Skipper, Craig Reynolds, Miles Adams, Shane Zylstra, Pat O'Connor, and Al-Qadim Muhammad today.
There you go.
So, yeah, we are waiting on 10 contracts. If you don't count those 10 contracts, they got about 41.8 million. But you got to add those contracts in.
There you go. Cam Jenks here, another bit says it's the Nate Bargatze George Washington SNL sketch with the DJ Reader
No one
contract.
knows.
Nobody knows. I don't even know that.
What?
I don't watch SNL anymore.
Oh, it's okay. It's a very funny sketch.
Okay.
Very funny
I believe you.
sketch. It's worth your time.
Okay.
We're going to watch it later on the stream.
No. Nope.
Yes.
No.
After the second segment. Go find it
No.
right now.
No.
Find it on YouTube.
We
Let's
won't be
watch
able to
it right
monetize
now.
on YouTube if we play an entire SNL sketch.
All right. We'll watch it on Zoom after
Yes.
everyone's gone. Everyone else just watch it at the same time as us, just so
Right.
we all feel like we're doing it together.
Twitch, you don't get to vote whether we're going to watch it or not because this doesn't affect you. Detroit, thank you for the 67 months subscribed on Twitch. All right, let's answer some questions. So, dude. I know this team historically has brought in a number of good UEFAs, but between the project guys and this team continuing to get better, you'd think the number continues to fall. Wasn't it 20 plus a year a couple of years ago? UDFAs?
No, they've never been. It's been between 12 and 17 under this regime. I looked it up when I was doing my projection article for Monday. I wanted to know how many players they kept at each position, how many UDFAs they had. I have it in one of my Excel sheets if you really want me to verify what year it was and all that jazz if you need it. But yeah, 17 was the max.
In the estimate you just threw out there of cap space, was that including rookie contracts or not?
No.
Okay.
The rookie contracts, we've talked about this, estimated about 8.5.
But
Only you're talking like less than, if the first 3 count, then you're talking about 5 million. If the first 2 count, you're talking about 3.8 million. But what you have to remember is that for every rookie that goes on, someone kicks off the bottom too.
right, because only the top 51 contracts count against the cap.
Right. So if I take first round pick, which is projected to be 2.6, and you throw him on, then 51 right now is Mitchell Gude, and his contract is just under $1 million. So now $1 million comes off. So really, you're only increasing the cap by 1.5.
Right.
And then if for round 2, That pick right now is estimated at 1.2. So again, add 1.2, kick off of mill. So you're talking about only an increase of 200K. And so the minimum you're adding with this rookie class is it's going to be like $2 million probably when it's all said and done.
That's until they trade up to 10.
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
Which we may or may not talk about.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of which, downgrade 20 asks, what position would you rather Brad trade for? Defensive end, or offensive lineman?
Trade defensive line.
Yeah.
Values, you get more value. There's I think it's a bigger priority. We've talked last week about hit rate on defensive line. Higher you take a defensive lineman, typically the odds of you hitting on that guy increase versus offensive linemen. You can get starters a little bit later.
Sure.
I think you can get starter in round 2 on the offensive line. I don't know if you can, round 3, when you're talking about pick 100, that gets a little more challenging, but doable. You know what I mean? Last year, they got a guy who is probably going to start for them this year in Mahogany. They got him at pick 210. You know what I mean? But I don't know how many times Brad can keep hitting on that, right? But often. We say that, and then he keeps doing it, So, yeah.
True.
I'm hoping to see a couple defenders in the first 3 picks. I'd love 2 defenders and like an edge rusher, offensive lineman,
receiver.
And what other defensive player you want.
Yeah.
If they went offensive line and if they went like edge, offensive line, receiver, I would get it. It would go against where their needs are long term a little bit, but I would get it. Because they have bigger needs on the defensive side of the ball long term. Even though they do need a receiver long term, they do need a guard long term. When you're looking at like 2026, they kind of have people in those spots, right? And so it is long-term need. I just think there's more needs on defense, and you get a little bit more value going defense. But at the same time, I would totally understand if they went end, guard, receiver. I would get it.
Yep. Mitchell Zoltan with a question here. Any strong candidates for a contract restructure in 2026, such as converting some salary to a bonus to free up cap space?
Jared Goff.
Jared Goff has a $50-some million salary. I did go.
Wait, in 2026, he said.
Yes.
Isn't it like 69? Oh, you mean base? The base is like 50. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
The part where you can convert.
I was thinking like in general, you were talking about, he was going to have a big cap hit. Sorry. You were already skipping a step. Never mind.
Yes.
Go ahead. Continue. So, Jared Goff, $50 million base.
Yeah. $55 million base salary. So what you can do, and I went over this a little bit in PODD this week, is let's say, and this is like, you don't have to do this much of it, but say you wanted to take $52 million of his base salary and turn it into what is colloquially called a signing bonus, which just basically means you can take 52 and split the cap hit in these next 4 years on his contract. So 52 divided by 4 is 13 million, right? So you basically put another 13 million here, another 13 million here, another 13 million here, another 13 million here. This would become 3 million. His base salary would go down to 3 million plus another 13 extra in signing bonus. So you drop his cap, drop the 55 million to 3 million plus, what'd I say, 13?
Yes.
So you would basically turn 55 million into 16 million.
16.
So you'd save 39 million in cap space this year. But it would add 13 here, 13 here, 13. That's where the 39 would go. But you can immediately free up almost 40 million in cap space just by doing that.
Sure. then you got to do it the next year too,
Yep.
because your next
Right.
year's cap is now 13 million higher.
Right.
Right.
And you have 40 million, so you can do whatever you want with that. You can take away 30 million and turn it into a
Mhm.
signing bonus. You can take away 20 million and do it. You can take away 38 probably.
You only do this with guys you're not moving on from.
Right. Because you are
Right.
kicking cap down the road, and if you cut them, all of that additional money that's getting that's getting kicked down the road suddenly become hitting your cap at once. The other person, there are a couple other, but I think the most likely other candidate is Amon Ra. I have to look at Panay. Panay might be up there too, but the two I looked at in
Can you
POD,
just go click on the line itself just for a second for me, if you don't mind?
everything is frozen right now, so I can't do anything. Great.
No worries. I'll do it myself. Let's see. Oh, I want to look. Is it back yet?
Nope. Oh,
Awesome
yep.
sauce.
What do you want? You want like 2026?
No, I was gonna say you can. There's other avenues. Like you could give Frank Ragnow a contract extension, and his 16 million next year can go down to 6, and you can
Right.
free up 10 million that way. If by doing a contract extension with Frank, you could if it's you're probably a little too if you're a little too early on. If you're like I'm on Ron Panay, you don't want to do those because it's a little bit early. Um, Same with the lean because it's a little bit early.
So Amon Raz is a little bit interesting because he
Okay.
already has 3 void years on his contract. And this year, next year, 2026 is the highest his base salary is on the entire contract. So what that tells me is that they're probably earmarking that to do it for him. They probably looked at 2026 and be like, all these cap hits are going to be hitting big. Let's increase his base salary high that year specifically so that we can restructure it. And you take, I mean, God, there's 6 years technically. So you take 24 out of that, then suddenly it's 4 million, 4 million, 4 million, 4 million, 4 million, 4 million. And you're left with whatever. Do that math. 35. So you're basically saving 20-ish million by doing that. But taking 24 million of his base salary, turning it into a signing bonus, quote unquote. And to be clear, and this is something that I learned recently, because when you do that, when you convert a salary into a signing bonus, my original belief or understanding was that players do that all the time because they suddenly get salary in a lump sum in a signing bonus. That's actually not how it typically works. It's just treated cap-wise like a signing bonus, but it's still handed out like a salary.
It turns into a guarantee.
Yes, it becomes guaranteed. That is the benefit to the player, is if it's not already guaranteed, it becomes guaranteed money, so that if the player gets cut, if the player gets injured, whatever, they still get that money, but it's still paid out like a salary is paid out. It's not paid out like a true signing bonus, which gets paid all at once.
So, fun fact. I've noticed that a lot of these options are coming due. Like I always forget to look at the little notepad underneath the
Yeah.
um but in 3 days, Amon Ra's 2026 salary, base salary becomes fully guaranteed.
Right.
So then that gets so if his salary is already guaranteed, if you're
Then
shuffling it, there's really not a harm to the team to shuffle it around
right.
because it's already become it just changes the location.
Right.
Guarantees stay the same for the team, doesn't impact Amon Ra in any manner.
Right.
It's these things get tricky.
Real quick, JT Sam 5-bit says, don't know if you guys talked about the proposed rule change. We did a little bit. Says for defensive holding, wouldn't teams exploit and hold more in critical situations? Also, I like divisions mattering and the week 18 stakes, so not a fan of that one. Yeah, we talked about both those things. My response to when players hold more in critical situations is yes, they would, but that happens at every other position. Offensive linemen hold when they're about to give up a sack because they'd rather get the penalty than the sack. Defensive linemen trip if they have to. They hold at times. Like, everyone does this, but for some reason we punish the defense more. And that's the problem I have. Plus, there's also like this, I am also downplaying a little bit how much more they're holding there would be, because it's like, wouldn't this player that got beat hold this player? I'm like, no, you just said they got beat. How are they going to hold them? They're beat.
I think they mean in the process of getting beat, like where you're still within range.
That happens all the time already.
No, I know.
I don't know.
We explained it a lot better at the top. So if you want to see more in depth, that'll be there.
Zern Baby Zern 45 months says, if you could take any position at 28, which would you prioritize and which do you think the lines will prioritize? I mean, it just
hard part is it's who's there. Right. Like,
based on the talent in the draft, based on the line's need, edge is the easy answer.
Right.
I think the answer of who the lines will prioritize is they're not going to prioritize a position. They're going to prioritize a player.
Yeah. Like, if you want an edge and Michael Williams is there, awesome. Best of both worlds. You want an edge and James Pierce is there, probably not.
I'm so glad I didn't let you write that article. You wouldn't have been able to restrain yourself. If you aren't picking up what Eric's putting down, he is comparing the Daniel Jeremiah Lions mock draft to Mel Kiper's.
Mel
Kiper. Does Panay stay at right tackle when Decker is gone, or does he shift over?
All depends on Manu. If Manu is ready and he's only trained at like left tackle, then yeah, you just keep him.
Right.
If Manu's not ready and you have to draft someone, or if you're looking to acquire free agent, yeah, shift him and then start training Manu on the other side.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair.
The thing is left and right are not as massive of a difference in today's NFL as they were 10 years ago.
You mean a level of importance?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
The edge rushers that come off the right side of the offensive line now often are better than the ones that come
like
off
Aiden,
the other
right?
side.
Aiden's a perfect example.
Right. And so in the NFC North for a while there, during Panay's early years, all the best guys were coming off left end spots and up against the right tackle. And that there's an advantage to keeping Panay there. And so if I had to speculate, I think they might just keep him there. They might just Lane Johnson him. Nothing wrong with that.
It's true. Not seeing that many.
We'll see about Manu.
You guys got to come hard with the questions here. RGA.
If you traded up the equivalent of a third round pick to get Manu, the plan is you're hoping to develop him into a starter.
Right.
That should be the expectation.
Yep.
So we'll see. I don't think we'll see how far he's progressed. Hopefully it's as far along as the coaches have said.
I would say that is close to like the number one thing I'm looking forward to in training camp. And I think part of that is because, like, what else is new anyways? At this point, like, it's going to be the rookies. Let me watch the rookies ball. And let me
Sure.
watch Giovanni Manu and maybe Hendon Hooker a little bit.
Sure.
Just the young guys.
Yeah.
Because everyone else
That's
is
what everyone's
relatively-
interested in. That's what all the
Right.
people that's what people want to read about.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to read about Jared Goff looking like a seasoned veteran in camp.
Right.
Like he's supposed to. He should. If we don't say anything, that means he is looking like one, right?
Right. RGA 100 bits. This is a quote. I'm going to guess it's from the Nate Bargatze skit. You can probably confirm it or deny. It says, I dream that one day our great nation will have a word for the number 12. We shall call it a dozen. And what other numbers will we have a word for? None. Nobody knows.
Yeah. It's great. He's talking about all the stupid stuff that we do in America compared to the rest of the world, like inches and miles instead of like metric system stuff. Like, yeah, it's all the silly stuff, right? It's very clever. It's very clever. And then the dozen.
Damien, I have not seen Brett Coleman's pass rush win rate table on edge prospects. Where do you see the line spending their remaining cap this offseason? Draft picks and extensions?
Yeah, draft picks, extensions, regular season, rollover.
Yeah. I think they're going to roll over a lot of money this year.
I mean, that's got to be the plan. Like, based on how their cap is setting up for next year, one, they have to be hoping for as much rollover as possible. Two, they have to come in with some decent extensions. Three, they may be targeting a potential trade or, like you said, a restructure. Like, there's some cap work that they're going to have to be creative with. But at the same time, I surely think that they have a plan for it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't speak in absolutes often, and I often rally against people who do. But there is zero doubt in my mind that Jared Goff's contract is getting restructured.
It's massive. And I think it's massive for a reason, right?
Yes,
like
right. I didn't say I don't deal in absolutes. So I don't say them, except for that one. Do you believe Bradfield's good with the current edge players? If you assume the hypothesis he set the roster before the draft, it still feels like they need something other than trust Marcus Davenport to stay healthy. I don't necessarily disagree with you. But I know if like we were to sit down with Brad Holmes tomorrow, he would say, listen, we liked what we got from Davenport last year. We like what Pascal was doing towards the end of last season. We bring back Levi, who can play on the edge. We liked what Muhammad did towards the end of last season. So I think he would try to sell you that he is comfortable with the edge they have. And I don't think he would go with, if this is the edge room that they have going into the draft, I do not think he will go into day one of the draft and say, I have to get an edge rusher.
the only pushback I would, if I was sitting across from Brad and I had full range to ask him whatever I want, the only pushback would be all of the players you just mentioned are only on one-year deals.
Yeah, of course. I don't disagree. It's
and that's Aiden too.
Right.
I mean, until the fifth year gets picked up, until the contract extension happens, right? But like, yeah. Like,
I don't disagree with anyone who thinks going edge makes a ton of sense, but it's a long term, like he's drafting more for long term need than short term need.
I think the first round is the only round where he factors in need. I think they go in saying,
except for Jack Campbell.
Well, I don't really count him as a first round pick because I think Gibbs was like he was their first round pick. Just like I don't.
No.
Okay.
That. Don't
in my
asterisk it like that.
No. In my philosophy of Brad Holmes' approach to the draft, I think the first pick he makes, how's that? I think the first pick he makes, he does with a very specific plan in mind. I want to come out of the draft with one of these like two or three guys, right? I think he goes in and says, these are my two or three guys that I'm hoping are there.
Sure.
And if one of those guys is still there and they're 3 picks ahead of you, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go up and get that guy. I think that's just his nature. It's tough to say because like with the Aiden draft, they had like, we had 2 guys. That was it. Right. But like with Terrion,
yeah,
I don't think this was a situation where it was like they had Terrion and then a huge gap before the next person. I think it was, we have a couple of guys that we want to get in round 1 if they're there, and he was like maybe the last one, and that's why they got aggressive to go get him.
Right.
And I could see a similar thing.
But do you think it was, we really need a number 1 corner, so I'm going to go get Terrion?
No, I think they had a couple, they might have had a couple of corners in mind, right? Like I'm blanking on the kid that went to the Eagles who I loved last year. Yeah, yes, Quinion Mitchell. I think they probably said we would love to come out of this draft with Quinion or Terrion. Mm-hmm. And when Quinion went to the Eagles, they were like, all right, let's go get Terrion then. Right? That's when they got aggressive, right after the Eagles picked. And so it wouldn't surprise me if he's sitting here saying, we're looking to get one of these edge guys. Right. Now, it's possible that stuff keeps dropping and there's still like 2 or 3 edge guys and they're like, hey, we can just sit here because we like a bunch of these guys.
Right.
But in my mind, with the first round, he's got specific targets and I think position is going to influence who those targets are only in the first round. After that, I think it's this is the collection, this is the board, but first round would not surprise me if he ends up with like first pick of his draft ends up being a defensive end. Because when you look at how the board lays out now and in the future, really use that edge guy.
Jay-Z, we're going to answer that question during the show. I had like 2 or 3 people ask that question, so we'll answer that one during the show.
There was another one that was highlighted up here from Captain Kirk.
I don't see ones that get highlighted in my chat log, or I mean, I don't see that they are highlighted. What does it say?
It says hypothetically, if the Lions are shopping Hendon Hooker, are there any mid-round QBs that you like?
Oh,
go ahead, draft expert.
I've not scouted a single quarterback this year.
Yeah, I don't think they would go quarterback. I don't think they would shop Hendon, not this year anyways. There's some interesting guys, but none of the mid-round guys, I think,
Minnesota's looking for a
are
quarterback.
capable of that. Mm-hmm. I hope they do. I mean, you're gonna. I don't know. Here, let me. A couple of the Ohio State kids. Both Will Howard and McCord. They're interesting. Who knows? Maybe Brad Holmes goes off script again and takes that kid from the from Canada that played in the Senior Bowl. I'm just saying he does crazy stuff.
Is that this Taylor Elgersma from Laurier?
That's him.
Is that a Canadian?
He was he was at the Senior Bowl, and he's like Manu. He's got unique skills that are, you're drafting him because of the skills. Oh yeah, and he can run and all kinds of fun stuff.
Couldn't Mahogany be the long-term solution at guard? He could be for one of the guard positions.
He should be.
The problem is that they have 2 long-term needs at guard.
Mm-hmm. I think he's one of them, though. Okay. I want to address Jalen Milroe because I love Milroe.
I do have that in the rundown.
Oh, it is? All right. I won't say anything.
So if
then.
I can find it.
All right, fine.
Yes.
Great. I won't talk about Milroe then right now.
Okay. I know part of the reason I put it in there because I figured you wanted to talk at least a little bit about it. Neon Fanny Pack, thank you for the 42 months. Subscribe to the channel and awesome name. I'm sorry, 45 months subscribed. 42 in a row. Laurier, isn't that what I said, or is that not what I said? Did I say Laurier? I may have said lawyer.
I need to get a phonetics guide for this draft class because there are some tough names in it.
We all know who brings it. Dan Brugler, baby.
Yeah, we got to wait, though. Another probably 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
At least.
I think really going to try to dig into tape next week before I travel down to Florida for the owners' meetings. All right. If they don't get Tyrion and end up with Darius Robinson or someone else, do you think Carlton gets the extension early? Maybe. Probably. All right. Let's get back into the show. And where did I? Oh, it's right in front of me. All right. Give me a second to figure out where we were. Okay. Welcome back to the Midweek Mailbag. Like I said, we got some questions on the draft coming up here, and we're going to start right there. Next question comes from Jeremy Z, one of our Pride of Detroit Direct subscribers, says, after the Combine, who would you call your top 3 prospects you think Brad would trade up from 28 to snag if they fell past number 10? So this has obviously been something Brad has done a fair amount of times, even in the first round. Trade up to get his dude.
I think if you've looked at any of the mock draft roundups that I've been putting out over the last couple of months, you would see the options at 28 are quite large. Even picking at 28 when a whole bunch of guys are very likely to not be around, there's still like 30 different guys that are being projected to the Lions. And that's because the range of player between 16 and 50 is probably closer than many would like to say. And so it's hard to exactly know which guys that Brad's targeting. Obviously, there are trends in traits that he's going to like in guys. Like if you're not playing on defense, you have to be able to stop the run, right? Like if you would like more pass rush if you're sticking with the edge, but I don't think you can just limit it to like these 3 guys. Like I think there's a much larger pool right now, and maybe things will narrow as we get closer, but edge seems to be the most obvious need for the Lions right now, and finding an edge that has like that toughness, that has that ability to stop the run, there's going to be some options. I think Mykel Williams is probably one of the top guys that's going to be out on the board. He meets them from a size, speed, length standpoint. He does everything that they want. He has upside. You have Marcus Davenport, who he can like learn from, and
right.
You don't necessarily have to push him into action. So I think Mykel will probably be at the top of the list. Maybe a guy like Mike Green would also be in that list. He's a little undersized for what they like to do, but he has a good history of stopping the run.
There's also the character stuff there too.
Yeah, that has to be sorted, but we don't, we don't know that. So right. Yeah, Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M.
Yep.
Again, like Michael Williams, size, speed, athleticism combination that fits that kind of big end opposite role that they've utilized a lot. Arakwu, I always pronounce his name, the Boston College kid's name. I've practiced his name so many times and I still mess it up. Like Green, undersized, but still has good run stuffing and still has some unique pass rushing. That would be both him and Green would be a bit of a deviation.
Right.
Whereas I think like Williams and Stewart would lean right into what they've done historically.
So those might be the talents because, like you said,
that you trade up for.
Right.
Yeah, you might trade up for Stewart
there's
or Williams.
this big pool of guys that maybe are on similar talent levels from 15 to 40 or 50 or whatever you said.
Yeah.
In a lot of those instances, you won't want to trade up. But Michael Williams, who could be a top 10 pick. I mean, he was a top 10 pick in one of those mock drafts. I can't remember whether it was Kuiper or it had to have been Kuiper's because he went to the Lions in Jeremiah's. Could be a top 10 pick. Shamar Stewart, because of how he blew up the NFL Combine. Maybe a team falls in love with those traits. Could be a top 10 pick. So if he's there, I wouldn't say if he slips, I wouldn't say the Lions jump at either of those guys if they're there at 12. But if they're there at 20, if there's a kind of Terrion Arnold experience where either there's this unexpected run on offensive players or just for whatever reason, though one of those two particularly guys are slipping into the 20s or maybe even the late teens, I mean, then you could possibly see. I'm not necessarily in favor of it, but given what we've seen from Brad Holmes, I wouldn't count it out. If Michael Williams is there at 19, might be scratching his neck a little bit and getting a little antsy.
Like with Williams, the reason he could fall is because he's still raw in a lot of his talents, and he plays the Trayvon Walker role, which is historically low production numbers. Right. Like the fact that Trayvon went number 1 was still surprising to a lot of people because his production numbers were so low. Well, it's the same thing with Michael. Like his production numbers are low because of the position that he plays at Georgia with 1,000,000 5 stars.
Right? Heavy rotation of players too, right?
Right. And Stewart, insane upside and just crazy athleticism, but again, production's a little low at Texas A&M. Texas A&M had a bit of a down year, and so, but again, those guys are bigger guys. They have the length that the Lions want. They have the height and the size, and so, but they could slip from a production because of a production standpoint, especially with so much other talent. So, I think those two guys are guys that I'm looking at as saying if they do fall, Lions could get aggressive for one of them.
All right. Next question here comes from Polar Polish on Twitter. Says, with the Lions having 2 undersized starters in DJ Reed and Amik Robertson, do you see the Lions targeting a tall day 3 corner like Za Frazier or Darian Porter? Now, before we jump into those guys specifically, I kind of want to talk about, the Lions having 2 undersized corners. Now, obviously, I think the projected starters are Terrion and DJ Reed. Which gives the Lions at least a little bit of a size. But I do wonder if this is at least a mild concern for the Lions because they haven't shied away from getting smaller corners, and I think a guy like DJ Reed proves that you can have a feisty smaller corner and succeed.
Well, Amik too.
But at the same time, you even heard DJ Reed talk about it in his press conference. Part of the reason it worked so well in New York for them was because they had Reed sometimes follow the smaller receiver, and they had Sauce Gardner, a taller receiver, follow the bigger receiver. So I do think there's at least a little bit of validity to this that the Lions would probably be wise to have some taller options at corner. Now, the other side of this, though, is if we're talking about a day 3 corner, this guy's not going to be good enough to start. And so what good is that your CB5, CB6 is a 6'2" guy, 6'3" guy, if he's not good enough for the ball.
Well, if we jump into these guys, I actually think Porter's a round 3 guy.
Okay.
I think Porter is ranked. I think he's in the top 10 amongst the corners right now for me. I think he might actually be 9 or something like that. Sure. He's a guy who I believe they met with at the combine. He's a little bit more zone, but I think he has man upside. And obviously, if they met with him, they do too.
Yep.
But he's a big guy that if they're like, hey, we're pretty thin and we need depth at corner, I could absolutely see them go ahead and take Porter in like the third round if he's there at pick 102. 100%. If he's not, I mean, he might go off the board before that, in my opinion. But I would be very interested in Porter. Um, when you get beyond that, it gets a little bit trickier with just taking a tall guy to take a tall guy. Because if you look at the Lions roster, Terrion's just under 6 feet. Ennis is 5'11" and a half. So he's just, again, a tick under Terrion.
Yeah.
But Amik's 5'9". DJ Reed's 5'9" and change, I think. Stanley is just over 6 foot. Stanley, Thomas Oliver.
Yeah.
But Dorsey's 5'9". Vildor last year was 5'10". Carlton was the tallest one at 6'1". You know what I mean? Like they don't have to have a taller corner as part of like as part of like their roster, right? Like
Sure.
it's not necessary. Could they target a guy? Yes. Would they target him only because of his height? No. But Porter is a guy who I'm very interested in, and like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he was there at 10. If he's there at 102, I wouldn't be surprised if they took him.
Yeah, I would say, and I think Reed has talked about this a little bit in the past too. The position has changed where, I mean, even like 5 years ago, where it was like your corner can't be below 6'1" or you can't make it in this league. Now it's you get these dogs like Amik, you get these dogs like DJ Reed, and they survive, and they survive off of their physicality. They survive off of their at times their zone skills. At times they survive for being a force in the run game, and it's more so an attitude than maybe the physical stature. Now, obviously, being taller when it comes to jump balls, when it comes to arm length and things like that, they matter. But you can get by without them if you're technical enough, if you're hungry enough, if you're physically unafraid enough. And it's clear that the Lions prefer attitude more than they prefer size, it seems like. And that's why, leading into the next question here from Cool Down Rat, can Ennis Rakestraw play outside corner? He's 5'11", 191.
Yeah, I don't think size is going to limit him from being on the outside. I think his long speed might limit him on the outside a bit. His physicality lends itself to the slot. But he has an outside mentality.
Yeah.
So I absolutely think he could be CB3 on the outside and could also challenge Amik for some situational nickel reps as well. So, could he outright win the nickel job? I wouldn't put it past him because he's got that kind of upside.
Yeah.
But then you're shifting Amik into a CB3 role, and that's, I think he's got so much talent. That's a hard path or a hard spot to put him in just because he's so talented.
Yeah, he won't go quietly into the night.
no. Like he would not. Like,
not saying he would put up a fit, but like it's not going to be easy to jump him on the depth chart.
Let's put it this way: if Ennis was week 1 nickel, there's no guarantee he'd be the week 2 nickel because Amik would be on him the whole time, right? Like, so yeah. And that's what I think makes Amik great.
But I think what's important to point out is, one, Ennis played both last training camp. So Amik played both too. And I think the Lions are probably going to continue to rep both at both because having that versatility in your primary backup, one of those guys is going to be the primary backup, and they're probably going to be the primary backup at both positions. They're probably going to be the backup outside corner. They're probably going to be the backup nickel. You do have Brian Branch, obviously, who can also play your backup nickel. But the problem is you don't have a clear safety 3 right now. You don't have a guy, at least to us, that is the clear guy to step in for Brian Branch or Kirby Joseph if either gets injured. So they're probably at this point hesitant to move Brian Branch into the backup nickel.
Yeah, and I think targeting a safety 3 with nickel range is probably on their agenda.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, next question here comes from Old Christopher. Asks, good teams often talk about drafting a quarterback every 3 to 4 years, with Milroe being the only quarterback the Lions have met with that we've heard. I'm going to throw that in there. Do you guys seeing us dipping into the running element at the position and taking a chance on him if he's available in the 3rd round?
Okay, they have that running element already in Hendon Hooker.
They do.
And one, I don't think Milroe lasts to the 3rd round because I think somebody's going to jump on him and think that they can fix his accuracy issues.
Okay.
So I'm kind of expecting him to go in the 2nd round. That's my guess. Is somebody's going to look at him and say, "Man, he's such a good runner. He's so elusive that I can turn him into Jalen Hurts." And that's what they're going to think.
Sure.
He's not Jalen Hurts. Like Jalen Hurts was a starter at Alabama before Tua jumped him. Right? Like Hurts had a long history of production, whereas Milroe's is, boy, he can run the ball real good, but his accuracy is a big problem. Yeah. It is, but the talent is so good that somebody's going to try and say it's worth the gamble. It's worth the gamble to go get him. The Lions don't need to gamble. There's no reason to. There's no reason to draft another 3rd round corner or a 3rd round quarterback if he happens to be there, especially because what are you going to do with him? Like, he's not going to get your practice squad. So now you have to carry 3 quarterbacks. He's not ready to be quarterback 2. And I don't know when he's going to be ready to be quarterback 2 on any team. Right. And look, as a college quarterback, Milroe was one of my favorite players to watch last year. As a analyst of what he can be at a pro level, he ain't there. Yeah. And I don't mean that like as a knock on him. He's got crazy talent. But the value for drafting him where you're going to draft him is going to be higher for a lot of other teams that have question marks at quarterback than the Lions. Even if you think he can be better than Hendon Hooker, you're forcing your hand to keep 3 quarterbacks if you were to draft him. Right. And by drafting him in the first 3 rounds, you're also saying we can't give up on him and we're going to have to carry him and we're going to have to develop him. And like, it's not there for Detroit.
No, I think that last point about having to roster him is the deal breaker for me. It doesn't make any sense because this is a team with championship expectations in 2025. So they want a decent backup, right? They want a reliable backup.
Yes.
Milroe is not that guy right away in his rookie season. And so he would have to be QB3. And so, I mean, we saw what this team was like last year. Like, I was one of many people who were complaining, like, why are we carrying Giovanni Manu? Why are we carrying all these guys that are these 3-4 year developmental guys when we're putting guys on IR every day and still having to carry these guys that are never gonna break the active roster because they're too developmental. Now you want to throw a quarterback on that to add to a quarterback who was already a developmental guy you took 2 years ago. I don't see any way this makes any sense whatsoever unless you are somehow of the belief that you can make Milroe your starting quarterback in 3 years and you want to take the Green Bay route. And I don't think he's that guy. I don't think he's anything close to that guy. I mean, if Milroe was a 7th round pick where you're like, let's put him on the practice squad because he would be great for us to practice when we play against, mobile quarterbacks. If he can be that practice or that
Tom Kennedy. Tom Kennedy.
Well, I'm talking about the squad that you play in practice. What I can't think of the word for it, but be that guy that's running the opposing defense, the opponent's offense. Mm-hmm. If you want that, if that's what you're drafting Milroe for, and you want to do it in the 7th round, fine. 3rd round pick is a waste of very necessary resources for a team that is going to need a lot of young talent to produce on rookie contracts because the scout team. Thank you. That on young rookie contracts that can help offset all of these extensions. A third string developmental quarterback is one of the worst ways you can spend that. And I understand maybe some people felt that way with the Hendon Hooker pick a couple of years ago. I don't think the Lions roster had progressed to what it was at that point. I think they wanted a long-term backup quarterback at that point. Remains to be seen whether Hendon Hooker is going to be that guy or not, but restarting that process now does not make sense.
And if people who have questions about Hendon, like in his accuracy, it's not even close. Milroe is further behind than what Hendon was 2 years ago, and he's certainly behind where he is now.
Yeah.
So you could make that gamble 2 years ago, like you just said. With Milroe, I just don't see it. I look, and I like him. I like him as a person. I like him as a player. I think he's a dynamic runner. He doesn't fit with Detroit.
All right, next question here comes from Mac Walker on Twitter. Says, when the season starts, who will be the edge opposite Aiden Hutchinson? Your best guess on the team or from the draft?
When the season starts, it's going to be Davenport. Unless he gets hurt. But my assumption is that it will be Davenport.
Yeah.
Even if they spend a first-round pick on a rookie, even if they trade up for a rookie, they're probably going to start the season with Davenport on the opposite side. Now, will he still be the starter in week 3? No, maybe not. But Davenport is getting, especially the way this team operates. If you look back at their week 1 rosters, it's always very veteran heavy in week 1.
True. That was going to be my answer. Like, dark horse, Josh Paschal, maybe. But
if Davenport's hurt, it's Paschal in week 1. Probably.
The heart, Michael Williams, but
sure.
No, I think.
Yeah, look, in an ideal world, you end up getting a terrific value at edge, even if you trade up to get them, and then by week 2, they're the starter and they flourish and they make the Pro Bowl and they're a rookie of the year and all that jazz. Like that's
right.
That would be awesome.
But living in
probably
the world of probabilities, I'm with you. It's probably Marcus Davenport. All right, next question here comes from Arcade Jimmy, who claims he's POD subscriber James P. I'm going to believe you. Says, this one's for you specifically. Would you take Aaron Rodgers on our team if it guaranteed a Super Bowl victory?
No. I don't want to sell my soul for him for a Super Bowl. Look, they're going to get a Super Bowl. I have confidence that they're going to get a Super Bowl without that cancer of a person on the roster.
What if he was just on the practice squad?
No. He doesn't. I don't want him anywhere near Allen Park. I don't want the hoopla, the circus, anything that goes with it. He's the walking contradiction that he is not worth it. And I know there's a lot of people that are probably yelling at me right now and telling me that I'm out of my mind and that it would be worth it, that you do anything you can to get a Super Bowl. I think they're going to get one another way.
That's how you have to answer the question. It's like, I don't
think
they need him.
No, let me put it this way. Why do they need someone who can't throw the ball anymore? Why do they need someone who insists on running a old system that he understands that the receivers on his new team don't, and he's calling audibles at the line that they have no idea what he's talking about, and then he gets mad and throws them under the bus when they don't make the play? Okay? Why do you need that on your team? How's that guy getting you a Super Bowl? He's not. That guy is not winning you anything.
This is the hypothetical. He gets you a Super Bowl.
Okay.
You can't break the hypothetical.
It is.
You're cheating again.
In reality, that guy is not getting you a Super Bowl. I don't care what roster you put him on. That is not the guy.
He would undeniably make my life worse the entire season he was on the team. I'd have to watch Pat McAfee every Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever time he's on that show. I'd have to deal with fans every single week saying, why isn't Aaron Rodgers starting? Why isn't Aaron Rodgers starting? Why isn't Aaron Rodgers starting? I'd have to deal with everything he says, everything he does. Terrible, terrible, terrible. I'd have to deal with Packers fans mocking us for having him on the team, and when he eventually wins the Super Bowl for the Lions or is on the team when oh, you guys needed Aaron Rodgers to win. He's the reason you guys want to. I don't have to deal with any of that. I can sit here and wait 20 years if it's 20 years until this team wins the Super Bowl. I don't need Aaron Rodgers on the team to get me it now. Absolutely not. I'm with you. Off the table. Not even a discussion. I don't want him in the building. If he steps a foot in Allen Park, that season is tainted forever.
Just burn the building down. Start over. Everything gets burned to the ground and start again.
Next question here from another Pride Detroit Direct subscriber. Tamor says, what is one thing that you'd like each coordinator to replicate or retain from their previous predecessor? And what is one thing you'd like them to change?
I would like them to still be a top 5 offense. That'd be awesome. Can you retain that? That would be fantastic.
No, let's start on offense. What is one thing that you hope maintains from the Ben Johnson era?
Just the overall philosophy and focus on the run game, the ideology of working the middle of the trenches by using your perimeter players to kind of push and keep the defense honest. Because if you do those things, you're still featuring the top tier talent. Like, your roster has been built in a way that being able to establish the run and being able to attack from the middle out is where your high end talent is. And right. That has to stay in place. Yeah. If you start saying, okay, I want to go 4 wide and like start slinging the ball around. Now Khalif's a starter. It goes against what you're built for. Yes. So yeah, exactly. I want play to your strengths on offense. These guys were set up this way for a reason. Maintain that look.
Yeah. I think that's an easy one. Another one that's relatively easy for me is just like keep the foot on the pedal, Don't take a step back in terms of your aggressiveness. I don't need all of the trick plays from last year, things like that. But I do want this team to maintain that if it's 4th and 2 on the opponent's 35-yard line, you're not lining up for a 53-yard kick. I don't want that. Love you, Jake Bates. I don't want that. I want touchdowns, not field goals. And so I very much hope that doesn't take a step back. And to be clear, I'm not even sure if that's an OC decision at this point. That is probably more of a Dan Campbell decision, which means it's probably not going away. But I do want to make sure offensively you're not taking anything off the gas there, because there's a reason this team was the number 1 offense last year and also one of the most aggressive teams on 4th down, because those things tend to go hand in hand. One thing you're hoping changes on offense. It's a hard thing to say for the number 1 scoring offense of what you'd like to change.
Yeah. I do want them to. I know the idea of them being able to push the ball down the field a little bit more is something that was brought up with the coordinator change, and so I do think that would be conducive to what they want to accomplish. Still, you have a weapon in JMO that you can utilize, and it's tougher with your slot options being your top targets to take that approach.
Right.
But I would like to see them at least test JMO, have JMO test them more than just like once a game. Right. Like, it should be a weekly thing that you try and incorporate. And so, maybe at least 2 Texas routes every game. That would be awesome as well.
I want to talk about the testing teams deep too, because I never got a chance to ask this to the coaching staff, and I would have if they had lasted a little bit longer in the playoffs. But I'm pretty sure they went the entire season with the fewest amount of pass interferences called on them, beneficiaries of pass interference. And I think part of that is they're not testing downfield enough. Now, you can obviously still get pass interference called on short routes, crossing routes, all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
But, I mean, we've watched Green Bay long enough from the other sideline to know that sometimes the deep shot offense works because you're going to get calls. You're going to underthrow a pass, and it's going to make the defender run through the receiver. You're going to get a ticky-tacky call here and there. You're going to get a legitimate call from a corner that got beat. A lot of good things can happen when you throw the ball deep. Some bad things can happen too, and they do. But I think I'm with you. Like, I'd like to see them take more deep shots. I know I would like to get more opportunities downfield. I'm not saying that's his strength necessarily, but we've seen it happen too. He's good at a double move, and given the amount of short to medium routes that he runs, something tells me some of those double moves can be maybe a little bit more effective than we've seen in the first 3 years of his career. Defense. What do you like? What do you hoping stays?
I like the aggressiveness. I like that they use a lot more man than everyone else. I don't know if it needs to be as excessive and as big of a differential between them and everybody else.
Sure.
But I do like the aggressiveness. I do like the flexibility of being able to shift between 4 and 5 man fronts, giving 4-3 versus 3-4 looks. Those are all fun things that they get to do. I would like to see more nickel, though. I think the talent they have a lot of talent in the back end. Yeah. I hate taking guys that are clear starters off the field. At the same time, I don't know how much they're going to shift to that with Shep, former linebacker coach, right? And the re-signing of Derek Barnes at a premium level. I don't know how much they're going to shift away from it. I would like to see more nickel personally, but indications are it's probably going to be like a repeat.
Yeah, I think my favorite part about the Lions defense is just their, I know it's not sexy and it drives some people crazy. I do like the emphasis on stopping the run. I think getting teams into 3rd and longs is the key to winning in this game. And it's proven to be effective in Detroit when they're able to field the defense that they want to. They were fantastic in the first 6, 7, 8 games last year because of that. They were one of the best run defense teams in the league, and that led to 3rd and long situations, which is why the Lions had an interception in every game in the first 8, 9, 10, whatever it was. I do think that's the formula of winning in today's football, and you see teams starting to put more emphasis on the running game too. And if that's the case, the Lions are already ahead of the whatever. I can't think of
the curve.
Ahead of the curve. That's it. I didn't want to say the wrong word. Then we have another steady as a mouse thing. But in terms of things that I'd like to see more of, or I'd like to see differently, I don't really know if I have a great answer for that, because I liked all the underlying things about what they tried to do last year. To me, the personnel just kind of fell short, and I mean, you could throw some, like, I do still think there's a lot of room to improve when it comes to defending mobile quarterbacks. I don't have a lot of good answers for how to do that, and I'm not sure.
More zone.
More zone.
More zone, more nickel.
Maybe.
More zone, more nickel. You get talented guys looking at the quarterback with more athleticism, right. Honestly, and that's like the exact opposite of what they put out there.
Right.
You're counting on guys. It's hard. It's in the defense they run. It's hard to play against mobile quarterbacks.
And it's and I do think at times the problem has been overstated. I do also think the idea of just, hey, throw a spy out there is way too much of an oversimplification. That, I mean, do you think Jack Campbell can catch some of these guys?
No.
I don't think
Sorry.
I love Jack, and he's a good football player, but just throwing a linebacker out there to cover a quarterback is not necessarily a foolproof plan. So, back to the drawing board with that one. And yeah, maybe it just means more zone. And the Lions play a fair amount of zone. It's not like they only play man, but
I think that's also a big misconception.
Right.
Is like the Lions play about like they play like 40 to 45% zone or man, which means they're still playing 55% zone.
Right.
But like the thing is the rest of the league is playing in like 30% man or less, right? And some of them are like 10% man.
Right.
And so it's the Lions play it a ton, but yeah, they still play a lot of zone. Like that's just part of the how the NFL works.
Yep. All right. Last one here. Let's kind of go through these a little bit quicker because we've been going long here. Alan Hemming asked favorite game from last year and why, and least favorite game that we won and why.
Oh gosh. It's a toss between for favorite game. It's a toss between week 1 and week 18 because week 1 was just fun. It was exciting. It went to overtime. It was like that overtime was just awesome. Like it was one of my favorite things to watch.
Yeah.
At the same time, the fourth quarter of week 18 was also one of my favorite things to rewatch because everything on the line, it was so important. Like those were my two like favorites that I walked away from. What are your favorites? What was your favorite?
I almost want to say Dallas. If the Hutchinson injury hadn't happened in Dallas, I would have said Dallas. The Thursday night against the Packers is also high up there. Because the Lions did that with so many injured guys, so many guys that like were on the roster on Monday and starting on Thursday. But week 18 is also a pretty darn good answer because that was about as satisfying as a regular season win gets when you're center stage, you're 15-2, you win the 1 seed for the first time. It's hard to beat that, and yes, it all kind of puts a damper on it when you don't win a playoff game after it, but it was a pretty special game. Least favorite win. I'm battling between two.
I have two as well for very different reasons. Why don't you give me yours first?
Mine are also very different reasons. One is Tennessee because that game was dumb and weird, and the reason the Lions won that game was special teams, so of course I hate it. The other one is Indianapolis. I went to that game. It was boring as hell. I don't think I could tell you a single play that happened. I don't think I could remember a single offensive play that happened. For some reason, I have a lot of defensive plays that jump to mind, like it was a real rough game for Kindle Vildor. Colts had a dropped touchdown.
Good game
Anthony
for
Richardson
Carlton.
was great in like the first drive. But that Indy game was boring as hell. It almost made me regret the entire trip to Indy.
Well, that must be the winner because that was one of mine. Okay. One of my two was the Colts game for the exact same reason. I was bored. Like by halftime, I was like, yeah, all right, this game's over. The one that was probably the most stressful was the 49ers in week 17.
What? There was no stakes to that game.
I know. But
how was it stressful?
Because it showed me the weaknesses and it showed me how teams could exploit the weaknesses. And it was the first time all season that I started to get like nervous. And
because it was
that's
like a confirmation of the Bills game in a way.
Yes, it was the injuries may finally be catching up with them.
Yeah.
And then I thought, everything's fine after they beat the Vikings. They killed the Vikings. Everything's great. Never mind. All my worries were for nothing. Yeah, but I'd say Indy's the winner here because it was just, God, it was boring. At least Tennessee was fun because it was like, I wonder if Khalif will house this one. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like it was fun moments in that Tennessee game.
That Tennessee game was bad chaotic.
Oh yeah.
The Colts game was bad boring.
We were marveling at the stats.
Yeah.
Where it was like Jared Goff, less than 100 yards passing, yet they're up 40.
Right. They hung 50 on him with like 150 yards of offense.
It was obscene.
Yeah.
Yeah, Indy was terrible.
All right, we'll call it there. Thank you all for sending us questions. Thank you all to our live audience on Twitch and YouTube. Thank to everybody as a Pride of Detroit Direct subscriber, which is a good time to remind people that next week's show is going to be a Pride of Detroit Direct exclusive. So if you like these shows, it's about double the size, sometimes even triple the size. We try to answer every single question that we get through our Pride of Detroit Direct subscribers. So if you want to be a part of that, go to prideofdetroit.com/subscribe, become a subscriber. And then when I send out the call for questions next week, just reply to the email and send in your questions and we will answer them for a 2.5 hour show, live on, not live, but on YouTube. A special link that only gets sent to our Pride of Detroit Direct subscribers. Be part of that. But until next time, that's Erik over there. I'm Jeremy. It's Chaos. Be kind.
Recording stopped.
Okay. We did it. We made it to the end of the show. How the Pistons doing? Chat, they winning? Why doesn't the little sports thingy show up? I know y'all are watching the Pistons game. Don't lie to me. They're losing by 2. Can you rank the teams in the NFC North on the standings for 2025?
The North? Just the North?
Yeah.
Flip the Vikings and the Packers. Call it a day.
Yeah,
That's
probably where I'd stand.
That's kind of where I was last year. Like
it's interesting because the Vikings obviously went on a huge spending spree, and the
Bears.
The roster's not bad, but unfortunately, the biggest question mark is the most important position.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I like Kevin O'Connell and think he's a good quarterbacks coach, you're still talking about a guy who's never started in an NFL game before as your starter. And so I think they'll be in a lot of games. I think the defense is going to continue to be good, and you obviously have a lot of good weapons on that team. So I don't think they're going to be a bad football team. But I do wonder what their ceiling is with a rookie quarterback. Essentially a rookie quarterback. I still might put him 2.
Maybe. Defense is good. Got it. The tough part is they're going to lose to the Bears twice. And then they're probably going to lose to the Lions twice. So
You think they're going to lose to the Bears twice?
Well, they've never beat Ben Johnson offense before, so there's probably 2 of the 4 games the Bears are going to win, though. So,
if you were to set the over/under, the Bears wins right now. I don't know what it's actually set at. 8,
7, 8, yeah, 7,
7.5,
something like that. Yeah, 7.5. There you go. That's my guess. I haven't.
What were they last year?
I don't know.
They lost like every game. They were like 4-2, and then they lost every game except for the finale. So I think they must have been 5-12. I think that sounds right. Let me look.
Yeah,
exactly
like honestly, it might be 6.5 might be a better line for Bears.
No, they'll win more than that. Because you spend the most money in free agency, you automatically win 3 more games the next year. That's how it works. I don't even know if they're the ones that spend the most in free agency anymore.
Patriots.
It was between them and the Patriots, and I think even the Vikings got close to at the end there.
Yep.
But that's my favorite thing that, I wasn't trying to put what's his name on blast from Good Morning Football, but I was also like, okay, free agency might help these teams get 3 wins the following year, but that's one because the teams with the most money in free agency are the worst teams. And so they're spending more because they have to field a good team. And 2, if you bump up 3 wins one year, but then you lose 3 wins the next year, what did you actually accomplish? Nothing. Because you need to draft well. Unless somehow... We were talking about this the other day. Can you explain the Minnesota Vikings' success a little bit? Because they haven't drafted well. And to me, when I look at the roster, it's one of the very few roster to me, and this is just me looking on the surface, that seems to have mostly been built through free agency.
Yeah.
They're just a weird team. They're just like a team that breaks the mold a little bit. I wouldn't say like they are a model that teams should follow. I think they're just like kind of surprised that worked.
It works for 2 reasons, and they're both on the coaching staff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
O'Connell.
That's
yeah,
what
right.
We said too.
Yeah. You have a really good offensive mind that is willing a offense that has question marks to be better than they are. And then you have a really good defense that is unpredictable and hard to figure out.
Yeah.
And that lasts for a while, but when the defense eventually gets figured out, like, then it has the problem, it has a potential problem to fall apart. But right now they're tough. They're tough in that manner. So, so often you get coaches that go in and they're, obviously their expertise is on one side of the ball, and they don't get that complementary coach who can hold down the other side. And I think the Vikings have that, right? Which is unique.
I'm just looking at the standings from last year, and I'm still marveling at the Lions because I had forgotten that 1, they went 8-0 on the road.
Yeah.
Only team to do that. 2, they were the only team in the NFL to win every single division game. And they were just so much better than everybody. Like, point differential, they were plus 222. The next closest team, the Minnesota Vikings, plus 160. Nope, sorry, the Eagles, plus 160.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought
the
Philly
Super Bowl
was up
winners. If only they would have done better in the playoffs. Any other questions, everybody? We want to just call it.
The Vikings only have 4 picks. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Good.
And I think it's like 1st, 4th, 5th, 6th or something.
It's in the chat.
Oh, is it?
First compensatory, 3rd.
5th and
5th and 6th.
Damn. Wild. We talked a little bit about the rule changes at the top, Morocco. But basically, I think we're both generally approve of. I mean, y'all know I way approve of no more automatic first downs for illegal contact and defensive holding. But I think we both agree it's probably unlikely to pass the way it's currently written. We're both take it or leave it with the playoff rule proposed change, and then the 90-man roster thing is, in my opinion, unlikely to affect anything because it requires essentially 20 plus players on injured reserve, which the Lions never crossed over 20, but they got close.
Yeah, but I still talked about it for 5 minutes because that's
sure
the ridiculous part.
But I mean, I have no problem with it. I don't think there's a downside to the IR one.
There's going to be people that should just fast forward through that section, but at the same time, that's stuff that the minute details that's very funny or very interesting.
Right. How do I feel about your take on the 2024 draft 1 year on? I feel the same. Where it was the first draft that I've ever really criticized, and I kind of stand by it on some level.
2024 or 2023?
2024.
Last year's draft?
Yeah.
Oh.
1 year. I mean, I wrote that thing where I'm like, Brad Holmes maybe feeling himself a little too much right now. That was a weird way to put it. Brad Holmes might be feeling a little cocky right now. My take was basically like it was a very risky draft class. He traded up, I think, 3 times, which y'all know I don't particularly love, and I think is something that I do think he has to pivot away from now, where this team is going to need draft picks, going to need rookie deals. You need to maximize the value of your draft picks and have more players on rookie contracts. And then you draft a developmental tackle from Canada, and you draft a safety to play running back.
I love that move. I don't care what anyone says.
Okay.
That move, that was a special teams move for a roster that wanted a player that could go out there and tackle 2 people in the same play.
Great. You
got
highlight. You get 1 highlight per year.
Dude, he also caught a 4th down conversion from his own red zone on a Jack Fox pass.
Yeah. How many points did that lead to? I'll give you a hint. They punted that drive.
Well, that's their fault, not Vaki's. That's yeah,
right.
I mean, why are we criticizing Vaki for something he wasn't part
We're
of?
criticizing the value of a player like that doesn't matter because it ultimately is how good your offense performs, not how good your special teams performs.
Oh, so you're back on special teams don't matter. I get it. All right.
Yeah,
This is a different conversation you're having here. You're using Vaki to try and make your point on why you hate special teams.
Correct.
Vaki has an incredible ceiling, and I'm very interested to see when he gets there.
Yeah, listen, I'm not.
We saw it. We've seen it. We've seen the flashes of it.
My take remains the same: that it was risky, not that it was bad.
Oh no,
I don't know.
Risky.
Like, what do you mean it is not? You don't think that was a risky draft class?
I'm saying I thought we were still talking about the Vaki pick. I think the Vaki pick was the Vaki pick was exactly what they wanted. They got exactly what they wanted out of it. That pick
so far.
Yes. So far, and we'll see how it goes. Like, you're also getting contributors in the 6th round, right? Like, that's good.
Yeah.
Is Manu the biggest wild card and the biggest risky draft pick that he's made? Certainly.
Yeah. But
I don't think you can knock the whole draft class for one pick that was, I agree, the riskiest pick he's ever made.
Well, I'm not only using that example. I'm using the fact that they traded up 3 times, including for that pick.
Well, I'm including the trade up as part of the risk.
But it would have been one thing to just draft him. It's another to jump and take a 2025 3rd round pick and use it on it. You are doubling down on the risk by doing that.
Right, which is why it's the riskiest. By fault, we're not disagreeing on that, no. But that's your whole dissertation is focused on the process of acquiring Manu, which is not wrong, but it's also a bit of a disservice to the other guys who I thought did well.
No, I also think trading him for Terrion is a risk.
He should have went in the top 10. He was the best corner in the class. I think so.
But he hasn't been.
I think he will be.
Okay. But that's what I'm saying is when you trade up for this is the whole reason why trading up is generally viewed as a poor decision, is because you are putting your eggs in being right in the draft, and being right in the draft is a big risk. It's why people value, hey, let the draft come down to you.
The value of Terrion, I think, was worth moving up to get him, because I valued him much higher than where he was drafted. I thought he was a much better player. The disadvantage for Terrion is that he is thrown into a system that plays so much man. he had a much bigger learning curve than some of the other rookie corners in this class who are coming in playing zone, not being full-time starters at first, developing into full-time starters. And like Terrion it has a much harder road and a much bigger learning curve because of the style of defense that the Lions run.
I agree.
Drafting a rookie corner and expecting them to start in this scheme should not be the expectation. And the fact that he was able to earn a starting spot, I think speaks to how how you don't think if they thought Amik was further along than him, then they wouldn't have played Amik. Absolutely.
They would.
I think that was the plan, but he wasn't, because Terrion was developing and he continued to develop throughout the season as well.
This is not.
You just don't like trade. You don't like trading up. You don't like special teams, and then you add on top of that the gamble of Manu, and that's why you didn't like it. It's correct. It fed into three things that you don't.
All of the tenets that I believe.
You specifically.
Well, and data. You don't think a full deep analysis of trade ups proves that trading up is generally a risky prospect? Because it does. Spoiler, it does.
This goes right in line with
Brad Holmes.
Yeah, but you had the same ideology on drafting a running back.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to have worked out well. That was one of your core principles. Oh, boy. You have these core principles.
Sure.
You have these. You are comparing apples and oranges here. like we are talking about this team in this regime, and you're cherry picking guys from years ago. This regime, and this is going to be hard for all Detroit analysts and beat writers to adapt to, is that they don't adhere to some of the traditional norms.
Oh, that's very much clear.
Right. And so the flexibility is required in order to properly analyze, and getting stuck in the mud on things that like you don't want to budge on gives you a perspective, I think, that isn't as broad as maybe you would like.
So you're saying if I analyzed all of the Lions trade ups, they would all be great?
No. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying you can't view it all in a bubble like that. Like, you can't just say trade ups are bad. Like I get what you're saying.
I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying they're more risky, which is true. I'm not saying every trade up is going to result in a bad result. I'm saying it increases the likelihood of a bad result.
I disagree with you. I do, because you're talking about quantifying something that is subjective, and saying whether a player worked out and at what level. And so I think that is a difficult thing to do. And so I take a different perspective, and I disagree with you.
Okay. Chad hates me because there's these mindless bots who just approve of everything that Brad Holmes does. No, I'm not. I'm kidding. This is a reference to Sunday Show. This is something that a certain radio host said that I think we all laughed at, and not all of us laughed at. Some of us yelled at. No, I understand what you're saying. Not everything adheres to analytics. Not everything is as black and white as sometimes I like to put it. And I'll admit that. Like, I understand analytics are fluid, right? Mm-hmm. The value of a running back today could be different than the value of a cornerback, running back 5 years ago.
We're seeing that in real time.
I think we are
seeing that evolve.
I I am not blind to those things, and I'm not willing to change my opinions on certain things.
Well, I feel like you have a little bit though on the running back position.
Changed a little bit. Yeah.
Yes. You've shown flexibility. That's but that's what I'm saying.
I just don't know if that can stand true for trading in the draft. Because the reason the value of a running back changes is because the game changes, right? Certain skills, certain kinds of players become more valuable on defense, which affects the offense.
But I think this goes back to a core philosophy of that we have differed on since day one, which is I am of the mindset that if you like a player and you trust your process,
sure,
I'm okay being aggressive to go get him. Whereas you are a little bit more passive and willing to let the game come to you to make your decision then. I like the aggression. I like the aggression on the football field and in the front office. And I know I hate giving up capital just like you do. I would love a trade back just like you would. Look at when you trade back for Gibbs, look at all the assets you acquire. Like, that's great. I love it. But at the same time, I'm also a believer in if you have confidence in yourself, go show it and go. If you think this is the best player, go get him. And if you're willing to take the risk, you're going to take the risk. And sometimes you're going to miss. You're going to miss on Broderick's. You know what I mean? Like, that was a risk. You traded up for Broderick too.
I know.
If you remember, right? Like,
oh, believe me, that is one of the bullets of in my chamber of don't trade up for God's sakes.
Yeah, but he also had traded back so many times. He also traded up for Brian Branch.
He did,
which is a nice
J-Mo,
feather for him.
Derek Barnes as well.
Mm-hmm. And both times with Derek Barnes and Broderick, he traded like a bunch of day 3 picks, like 3 day 3 picks to go up. Right.
And if there's a way to get me behind a trade up, it's get rid of all of your day 3 picks.
Right. Like, he should be your favorite GM ever. He's done that twice.
But that's
twice.
Those kind of trade ups, great. Trading into the next year's 3rd round pick, not great. I don't love that. That's another thing that I don't really love, this idea that a 4th round pick this year is worth a higher round pick next year. Those are the trades I don't like. Trading into the 4th round with a 3rd rounder next year. That is clear negative value to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like when teams do that.
So they gave up what is the equivalent of what would be pick 90 roughly, right?
What
in this
yes.
So they gave up
pick.
So that would be 4 spots, so 92. So they gave up pick 92. The pick that they got from Manu was 126. So they essentially gave up 34 spots in the draft. Is what they gave. Well, and you give up those 34 spots to get a guy in camp a year ahead of time, which hopefully reduces his learning curve.
Right.
I mean, that's what they did.
Right. I got some people on side with that take. I'll take it.
Look, I don't think anybody was jumping head over heels for the Manu pick. You know what I mean? Like, I think
you admit it was a bad pick. Great.
I didn't say bad pick, but I said it was. I'm
kidding.
It's easily his risky. I said that before. Yeah. Easily his riskiest pick.
Right.
And I didn't know enough about him, and I didn't see enough progress in camp to say that it was worth it.
Right.
Right.
But it's alright. But we can both admit it's we didn't expect anything in year 1, and that's exactly what.
Yes, and we probably shouldn't expect much here either. This time around. Maybe that's kind of what we were told.
It's a little bit more, just because, it's all Justin Rogers' fault for writing that article of like, yeah, he's night and day from what he looked like, and so now
look, they kind of hinted he was on the mahogany path and developing at the same rate, and if that's true, great. He's your OT3
If
then
that's
with a bullet.
true, I'm going to shut my mouth in a hurry about criticizing that draft class.
But I mean, the Mahogany's just he should have been a third rounder.
Right. And it's again one of those times where you can play the game of like just swap Manu and Christian Mahogany and the draft class looks a lot better.
Yeah. Just like swap Branch and Gibbs.
Right.
People would have lost their push Gibbs to Jack's spot.
Yep. Yeah. I'm
totally different.
I'm aware. Which again is why when I'm criticizing something, I'm not saying you're very rarely going to find me say that was a bad draft pick on draft night.
Okay.
Risky is what I prefer to say.
I remember when he made the Gibbs pick. And they picked Gibbs and I went, I have to look at the computer and start typing this. And all I remember is everybody turned and looked at both of us and you were just like, and I was like,
I wasn't that mad. I think I was laughing mad. All I remember
I was like, I'm not looking.
Colton pulls out his phone, immediately turns to me.
I looked up and Colton's the only face I saw, and I was like, I'm looking back down again. I'm looking down and typing. I'm not looking at Jeremy. I'm looking down and typing.
My favorite part of that night is when the Falcons took Bijan 4 picks earlier, and I'm like, oh, phew. Well, that bullet has been dodged.
It was such a weird night. That whole class was weird. Because even Campbell, we were like, oh my gosh. And then everybody was sky is falling, remember? And
it feels like that every single draft sometimes.
And we just kept saying, wait for the totality of the draft. Wait, and then it's Laporta, Branch, and then people are like, oh, all right.
Yeah, but that was the next day. Remember, that's day 2.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
You had to wait.
The whole 24 hours, we just kept saying, just wait, just let's see what happens. And when they made the Branch pick, everybody was like, all is forgiven.
Right.
They rightfully so.
Yep. Yeah, I remember clear as day. The line's just getting dragged through the mud all night. Night on Thursday.
Oh yeah.
Because they took 2 of the least valuable positions. And listen, Campbell to me is still very much a was that the right pick? Wasn't that the right pick?
It looks like the right pick now.
I still think it's a little bit more ambiguous.
No, I think they looked at their linebacker group and said, we're not sold on Barnes and Alex is better at the will. And this is a rare cat with size, speed, and
I'm just saying,
just the mentality. And I think it makes a lot more sense 2 years removed than it did in the moment.
In terms of roster building, yes. In terms of talent level, I think there's still a level that Campbell needs to get to.
Oh yeah,
and he should, and I think he's will.
Getting closer. He's getting closer though.
But he doesn't have those disruptive plays that I think I've been looking for. Right,
they flash. They flash.
5 tackles for loss each year, 3.5 total sacks this year, 6 passes defended. I'm kind of surprised to see that he had 5 last year. I don't really remember that many. No interceptions yet.
Yeah, but they have him coming downhill all the time. That's going to be hard for him to get a pick.
I just I want to see some of those disruption numbers up next year.
The Campbell pick is what keeps me on edge. And it's what keeps me wondering.
Because if you remember, there was plenty of narratives going around that, the Rams never valued linebackers. The Lions won't ever spend a first round or even a second round pick on a linebacker. It's just not what they do. They don't value linebackers.
Yeah.
And then bam!
that draft was a kick to the face for me, man.
And it wasn't even
It
it wasn't even viewed as a big need, right? Because you had Malcolm, you had Derek, you had Alex.
mm-hmm. That's what makes me wonder, like, what's it going to be this year? Where you're
Well,
like,
that's why we had a semi argument off air about Jihad. I think he's still in play if he's there.
oh, I don't think he's going to be there. I think that's really what my primary stance was. I think he goes in the
He's
top
gone.
12.
There's news about him today, right? Didn't he had labrum surgery?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Post draft. Yeah, it ain't gonna matter. He's too
He's getting it or he no he did
had
he
it.
went under okay.
Yeah, he is. People are gonna look at him and they're going to say, "Can I turn him into Micah Parsons?"
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And he's not Micah. Um, but he could be Frankie Louvu, right?
Yeah.
And that's
That ain't
that's
bad.
still good. Um, but people are going to look at that and they're going to be like, man, an off-ball guy that can pass rush, that's going to be great. Blah blah blah. And then they're going to look at guys like Jalen Walker, who should be an edge guy at 243, 6'1", 243, basically James Houston.
Right.
And he's not as good off the ball. And people are going to be like, is he better than Campbell or vice versa? And it's going to be interesting. So, fun note on him. I've been building. We have reformatted. I haven't even told you this. We have reformatted our grit index like entirely. We have expanded it. We have narrowed the focus on it, and it is wildly larger than what we've done in the
This
past.
is you and Between the Numbers, Anthony.
Yeah, and
Shout out.
I to the point that I'm recruiting
I
people
thought you were trying to recruit our staff. Did
Al and Ryan have offered to do some
good
help.
for them?
I
I didn't.
You did not. It's not terrible, but basically what we've done is we've taken like 5 main sources that I like to utilize, like 5 main analysts slash websites that I like to use for a lot of general knowledge. And then we've also have like a miscellaneous section. And then we're combing through those sources looking for different things that we've identified as grit, right? And instead of just doing like buzzwords that we've done in the past, we've separated it into 6 different categories. Okay. And within those 6 different categories, there are between 3 and 4 buzzwords for each category. And then what you're trying to do is you're trying to earn a point in each category. So, for example, my task today was to go through Daniel Jeremiah. Mm-hmm. So I went through and pulled all of everything he's written on the 2025 class. And I went through that today and reading through, and I'm basically like identifying, okay, he said this about this, that qualifies in this category for this player. And so I've been accumulating. So now what we're doing is it's more specific. It's more of like a point system.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're not just saying this is he included this, so we're going to give him like this level of a scale. Like we're mathematically trying to put a number to it. And where I was going with this was I got through Jeremiah's thing.
Yep.
And he and Jalen Walker had the second highest grit mark for Jeremiah amongst the edge rushers. The second one was, ironically, Josiah Stewart, another kind of off-ball linebacker type guy from Michigan. But those 2 guys had the highest grit score in Jeremiah's category.
Can I say something?
Yes.
this is crazy,
Yeah,
but
but it's
it's also, I think, extremely valuable. And I don't know if you'll pull it together this year, but you should sell it.
well, I kind of include it in my there's two things I do
Right.
with it. One, we're going to write an article or
Yep.
more on it,
Yep.
and two, I include it in my Patreon. So
Right.
when I get done with the Patreon, like the whole idea of it was that it goes into like a Patreon, like
Right.
it's like an addendum
Yes.
to the board. But I'm trying to see if I can find ways. Like with Al, I've said, hey, if you're looking for ideas and you want to do draft content, maybe this will help you. Some of your research that you're doing for this can help guide you with some of that stuff. And so
Yeah.
I'm still kind of putting the fine tune elements on it. And then, so it's going to look cool when it's all said and done. Couple of guys that I thought were like good fits coming out with like higher grit scores. I'm like, oh, good. Maybe that guy meshes. Maybe I should be looking a little harder at this guy, and maybe I should move him up. Um, it's kind of a cool way of trying to differentiate, and this is going to be hard doing it the first year,
Right.
but I think it'll get easier as we do it now that
Streamline
we
it.
kind of have a system. Well, and like we can do a little bit of work at a time, like as the
Sure.
years go, as opposed to like
Right.
trying to jam it all into whatever. But I think and we'll see how it goes. We've done
I
pretty
just
well
the
with it in the past. So
the thinking that's going through my head is there are so many draft guides out there, right? So many people trying to sell
yeah,
you their draft guides, some people giving it away, some people including it with subscriptions. This is different than all of that. And with the way the Lions draft, I would argue it might be more important.
no, it probably is going to be more important than my board, to be
Right.
honest.
Um, and so like I also think a tiered system or a ranking system among these are going to be helpful because I went back and looked at our grit list last year, and it was just like it was a list of like 100 names, 150 names,
Hmm.
and the Lions drafted like out of their draft picks, it was all but one.
Right.
But how helpful is a list of 150 names when you're trying to scout?
So that was the first time we did it. It was kind of like that, and that's why
Right,
last year we applied the tiered system. So
right,
we tried to narrow it down to make it more user friendly. Like, hey, there's only 20 tier one guys or whatever,
right,
right? And that's essentially what we're trying to do again here, because there's like right now there's not a lot of separators. Like I see someone talking about Jack Sawyer, right?
yep,
Jack Sawyer should be huge when it's
right,
all said and done. Right now, um, again, just with Jeremiah, he's third, tied for third on the edge list, which is not bad. But I fully expect when we get into the other profiles,
right,
the other analysts that we look at, the other written material, like we're going to find more buzzwords and more things about him. And we're not like restricted to like these buzzwords. If there's like something that comes up and we're like, hey, that sounds like work ethic, but it's
right,
not one of our buzzwords, like we're going to count that, right?
right.
So um yeah, it should be cool when it's all said and done, but it's in its infancy.
Yeah,
But I can't think of any other way to start trying to quantify how Brad views these guys.
right.
It's 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 kind of crazy.
I'm looking at last year's list. So like Terrion was a tier 3, Rakestraw
Mm-hmm.
was a tier 2, uh,
Vaki would have been
Mackay was a tier 1.
yep,
Was Vaki under safeties?
yeah, should have been.
Oh, he was a tier 1.
Yep. And
Uh,
again, we only had like 20 of those tier ones, so getting at least
right,
two of those guys is pretty good.
right. Mahogany was 2, I think. No, he's a tier 3. So, yeah, maybe every guy that probably Manu probably wasn't on here.
Yeah.
Probably just wasn't a guy that you looked at.
So far, I've only had one guy hit in all six categories. know.
You gonna give it up?
He plays on offense.
Is he your wide receiver?
Nope.
Dang it! I was hoping it
It's
was gonna
funny
be
because
my guy from Stanford.
it's funny because a couple like the wide receivers that get the buzzwords are usually like the smaller receivers,
Right.
right?
Scrappy.
Because that, yeah, right. Like, so it's like Matthew Golden from from Texas,
Right.
who's up there, who's Abuka from Ohio State, another like 6 foot guy, right?
Yeah.
Like it's those guys that tend to get more
That don't win automatically with their athletic
right.
skills.
But look,
effort.
to their credit, those guys that are undersized for wide receiver, they're good because they are good at those things,
try.
right? Yes, and they work hard. So,
Baddies grid index. What is that?
Okay. I have the main analysts that I've learned to trust over the years. And so I'm leaning on their work, their written work right now, but I do have a section that is basically open to whatever. So it could be player interviews. It could be people talking about them on Twitter, like an analyst talking about them on Twitter. It
Could be
could
like
be
their story. Like if they came up
100%,
from
100%.
tough times.
So like so I am accounting for things that go beyond just like the analyst, what analysts are saying about their game. And so I do have like my feelers out for other things, but I'm trying to create some sort of uniformity as well. And those are kind of like bonuses,
right.
essentially. So as far as like if they're interviewing with the Lions, I don't factor that into the grit score. I do have that sectioned off in my draft board. But the reason that I don't incorporate that is because I've the curtain's been kind of pulled back for me on how people are reporting interviews versus formal interviews and how they're definitely not the same, and sometimes people are confusing the two. And so sometimes people are reporting, yes, this guy met with the Lions, when really it may not have been a formal interview. It could have just been they talked in the hallway. And then if that's the case, it holds less value. And so I'm trying not to wait too much on visits. The only ones that I will wait a little harder are top 30 visits or the T30 visits, right? And so, and if I actually have a tracking sheet on that.
And we'll eventually post a top 30 visit tracker list. But you may have noticed in previous years we've done full visit trackers that go back to the Senior Bowl and the Combine and all that stuff. And I think we've decided that the value of that is not as good for the reasons you were saying. Meeting at the Senior Bowl is also kind of BS because you meet with just about everybody at the Senior Bowl as well. So I think those lists aren't as insightful or valuable as maybe even we believed in previous years. But the top 30 visits are pretty clear cut. So we'll do a top 30 visit tracker and then maybe in that include like local days.
Last year, Arnold, Rakestraw, Manu, Vaki, their first 4 picks, all had top 30 visits.
And if I'm not mistaken, I've only seen one of those reported publicly so far for the Lions.
Yes, I'd have to double check, but
JC Paxton says he was talking about team interviews like after a game or during the season, like press interviews.
It will
evaluate that ever.
That would be that would fall under the miscellaneous, right? Like I'd have to be. It's a little harder because those don't always tell a story unless there's like unless a story's being told in part of that, right?
Right.
So, but yes, right now I'm trying to.
I think
We're trying to figure it out still. We're
a
trying
good
to figure out
example
all the
of that
details.
would be, and I don't know if your search would even unearth something like this, but like I think back to Jack Campbell, and when I think about the person he is, I think about there was a post-game interview where like he felt like the media was trying to get him to blame the offense for the team's struggles. And like he kind of got on a soapbox and being like, listen, this is a team. You don't know our relationship in the locker room. Like he like got very emotional about it in defending his offense and defending how this is a team and we don't look at the offense and the defense as, different units. We're all part of one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Very much a character defining moment.
Right.
But
that would fall under passion, the passion section.
We have a passion section.
We have passion, work ethic, dependability, toughness, intelligence, and leadership.
Interesting. You're giving away the juice here.
Mm-hmm. That's the 6 exercise. I did tell you what the words are, but those are the traits we're looking for. Like that would fall under passion. That would probably fall under leadership too. So
go ahead.
That for Batty, that would be work ethic, right? Like we're talking, like when we look at guys that were like walk-ons, like that, they're gonna get work ethic credits, right? Guys that came out as walk-ons, worked their way up, found a role. You're going to get credit for work ethic on that.
Cram, they didn't propose my rule for DPI. They did it for illegal contact and defensive holding. Next year we make defensive pass interference a 15-yard penalty. Baby steps. Got to walk before you can, or crawl before you can walk. 2 more, and then I think I want to get out of here since it's almost 10 o'clock here. Do you guys think Laporta's on track for an extension? Extending a TE shouldn't cost that much, but how much of a priority should he be? I think we both agree he's probably on track. Yeah. They won't do it. He's not even eligible this offseason, right? He has to be
Correct.
next offseason.
Next year.
But I don't see a reason why not. The tight end, like you said, the tight end market isn't crazy. I think Laporta is continuing to grow as a player, even though his catching production took a step back last year. I've lost zero faith in him as a top 5 tight end in this league. So,
I think that injury really zapped him, and then he kind of came into his own. Yeah.
Agreed. And then the other one, do you think right now Mahogany will start this year?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Which side?
I think he starts. I don't know.
The other starter?
I don't know. Could be Graham. Could be TBD.
Will Hernandez.
Could be Scherf.
Brandon
I wouldn't
Scherf.
mind Scherf. Scherf's still
Why
out there.
hasn't he signed anywhere?
Because he's old.
Because he's old.
I mean, could be a guy that they draft. Could be Tyler Booker.
What did you say, Mahogany, left or right? Because Colorado Lions just asked with his 5-month sub.
Oh,
you don't care?
It depends on who else they get. Because he, in my mind, looks like a right guard, but he sure looked like he could play it left. So
right.
I'm willing to keep it open.
Okay. And I'll let Nick the Greek squeeze one in here. Oh my dear Lord. We don't get a lot of donations very often.
You are Brad
so...
Holmes. You trade up to the 10th
Nice.
overall pick in the first round. Who do you take?
Okay. 2 things just happened that I forgot happened. when someone donates directly. The alert is way louder than any other alert, and it goes text to speech, which I forgot was a thing. So Rock Snubs will also get a question in here. Nick the Greek says, I just got the toddler down. Wife won't let me play bedtime podcasts. Can I ask a question? My question is to Erik is, tell me why the Vikings are going to suck this year and also in the future, please.
We kind of talked about that.
We did a little bit.
We did. Big question mark at the most important position. You got a rookie starting at the most important position, and
you think he's garbage, right?
I don't think he's garbage, but
I don't. A Michigan alum is garbage.
Well, I think he's got talent. He's just I don't know where it's going, and I don't know if he'll be ready. But,
I think there are a lot of fair questions about his arm.
Well, look. There are reasons why they ran as much as they did, and I think he has the talent, and I think he can make some tough throws. But it's tough for a rookie, man. It's tough to play rookie quarterback. Not everyone. There's only, you can't. There's not that many Jaden Daniels hanging around. You know what I mean? Like.
And to answer why they're going to suck in the future, I'll step in for that one. They're currently over the cap in 2026.
Nice.
They don't have any draft capital. They haven't drafted particularly well under Kwesi. So how do you keep this afloat when the money runs dry? You're just going to keep relying on getting way more out of free agency than any other team seems to? No. All right. The part? That was it.
Oh,
tell me why the Vikings are going to suck this year and also in the future.
No. The donation I was talking about.
Oh yeah. Rock Snubs $10 donation says you are Brad Holmes. You trade up to the 10th overall pick in the NFL draft.
Yes.
Who do you take?
Going up to 10.
All the way up to 10. Who's still there?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Take Will Johnson?
Obviously, the defensive line is where your priority should be. The question is, would Mason Graham or Abdul Carter still be there? Carter is a no. Mason Graham is also probably no.
I was going to say. It's not the sweet spot for the defensive line. I feel like 10 overall.
It's not.
Like I feel like you might just go Michael Williams. Like you don't overthink it and you just take the guy we've been talking about all podcast.
I mean, if they think, I don't see the thing with Michael and Shamar Stewart is I could see both of them going at 10 and I could see both of them going at 20. You know what I mean? Right. Because how much is that production or lack of production going to influence GMs in their decision with those two guys? Because I think they both have crazy talent.
What about McMillan, wide receiver?
I don't think you need to be at 10 for him.
No?
I think the receivers are going to fall into the teens. Although McMillan would be a heck of a lot of fun.
How about Ashton Jeanty?
Yes. Geez, could you take Will Campbell from LSU and play him at guard, and then you have your tackle option, or maybe a Membu out of Missouri? Those two guys are probably top 10-ish or top 10 picks who are they would solidify your offensive line for who knows how long.
When do the Bears pick?
I don't know, 10, I think.
I think they do pick 10. I was gonna say like pick
I'll
Janty just so he doesn't go to the Bears.
Yeah, it is 10.
Everyone is like, I feel like
Trade up with
every
New
mock
Orleans.
draft from here until now is gonna have. Is it Janty? I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't watch college football. Janty?
Genty.
Janty.
Genty. Yeah, like it'd have to be an offensive or defensive lineman, probably. I like Will Johnson. I don't know if I'd take him at 10, but I like him a lot. Boy, oh boy, would that be fun though.
That'd be fun. It'd be fun. If you can stay healthy, man. He's a good player.
I really like Jalen Walker, the edge, the Georgia edge, but he's so light, and I think he will. I don't know if that's going to like drop him down boards. Like I could really see it doing that. At the same time, he's just freaky. He's Hassan Reddick-ish, like more than he is James Houston.
Right.
But with Derek Barnes, like, is he just redundant? You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of my thing. Like, but it goes to the Jack Campbell theory.
Guys,
You just
I
take him and
wanna
play?
Turn on the Pistons game right now.
So turn it on.
It's tied with 5 seconds left.
Oh no.
I gotta turn it on, guys, and it's on ESPN. I think, unless it's blacked out locally. It's not. Sorry, guys. I'm gonna watch the end of the Pistons game. Sorry if they lose. They got the ball with 5 seconds left. They can't possibly lose in regulation. Sorry. It's okay, JT. It's a regular season game. They're fine. I'm sick of watching these games on the Yahoo app, all right? Where I'm just refreshing to see what the score is. Let me watch at least one play. Who y'all got in the NCAA tournament? I haven't made my bracket yet. I'm going to make it tomorrow morning. I don't have a K jersey. Tell me who's going to win. And don't say Michigan State. First person I see says Michigan State. I don't know what I was expecting. Oh my God, don't get a 5 second. That's close. Oh! K just banked it in a 3-pointer with 0.6 left. That was ugly as hell. The curse is lifted, everybody.
Oh no! Here comes a 4-point play.
No, it's already over. They inbounded and didn't score. You're welcome. That was so ugly. All right, it's time to go. I think it's time to go. What's coming up here? Podcast on Sunday, most likely, maybe Monday. Midweek can't be later than Wednesday because I'm going to be in
PODD.
Oh, that's right. PODD. Midweek Mailbag. I'm going to be in Florida from Thursday to Thursday for the owners' meetings, which I think are mostly going to be on Monday and Tuesday. But I'm going to spend some time with my mom while I'm down there. Yeah, that's all I got. More coming on. I think we're getting pretty ready to go into high gear in the draft. I gotta get the
I've already turned it. I've already turned the page.
If you're a Pride of Detroit commenter, we're gonna start the community mock draft pretty soon here, which is a fun thing where you guys get to operate as not everybody, but we'll pick 31 people to operate as an NFL general manager. And the fun thing this year, for the first time in community mock draft history, I believe, every single person is going to get a first round pick.
Mm-hmm. So far.
Yeah.
So far.
All right. We'll call it there. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thanks for all the donations, the resubs, the bits, the comments that didn't include the word week in it.
I don't care. It's a compliment. We're hip.
We're mid. Appreciate you guys. If you're on YouTube, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button and checking out all of our native YouTube comment. Miko, Morgan do a great job with content over there. That's not live streaming. They do a really good job production wise. They know their stuff. And they got a real good chemistry going on. So make sure you're checking out that stuff over there. If you're over here on Twitch, always a good reminder, if you are subscribed to Amazon Prime, you can link that to your Twitch account and subscribe to us for free. That gives you ad-free experience. It gets you emotes like the shaking Kabinda face and all sorts of other stuff. But until next time, guys.